Night falls over Oryu Incheon, but there is no peace in these streets. A frantic cry pierces the dark as a terrifying blue Xenoterran corners a helpless mother and dangles her crying baby in the air. With the local police forces already taken out and overwhelmed, the crowd can only watch in absolute terror. The creature opens its massive jaws, ready to end a innocent life before anyone can react. Just as all hope vanishes, a sudden blur cuts through the night air. In a fraction of a second, a fierce slice severs the monster's arm right at the shoulder before it can harm the child. Stepping out of the shadows is a masked teenager wearing a cap and visor. He walks into the battle zone with absolute calm, standing firm against creatures that terrify the entire nation. As the severed appendage hits the concrete, the boy deftly catches the falling infant out of midair. The injured monster reels back in shock, totally unable to fathom what just hit it. Before the dust can settle, heavy stomps shatter the pavement as a colossal red Xenoterran comes charging in. The crowd gasps as the violent beast surges forward to crush the scene. Without skipping a beat, the young hero gently places the infant safely back into its mother's trembling hands. He turns around and sets his sights on the new target, ready to protect the city. With explosive velocity, he lunges forward and delivers a brutal shockwave punch right into the red monster. The sheer force shakes the creature's massive frame down to its core. He follows up with a heavy kick, slamming the giant into the pavement and cratering the ground beneath them. His overwhelming strength dominates the engagement from the very start. Desperate to crush him, the beast opens its razor-sharp jaw to snap him up. But the masked hero doesn't retreat for a second. He drives his fist straight into its open mouth with devastating power. He keeps pressing the assault, unleashing a rapid blitz of relentless strikes that smash through the monster's defenses. Each blow hits like an artillery blast, leaving no opening for retaliation. With one final crushing finish, the gigantic Xenoterran is launched across the street, skidding against the asphalt until it is completely taken out. The fight ends almost as fast as it began. A stunned silence hangs over the alley as citizens stare in complete disbelief at the fallen Leviathan. Then, a lone person starts to clap, sparking a wild wave of cheers across the street. The emotional mother calls out to thank her savior, overwhelmed with relief. But under his visor, Kang Lim remains stoic, carrying the silent weight of a hero who must fight in secret. Launching himself high off the ground, the superhuman leaps across the rooftops and vanishes into the moonlit night. The world now knows that real defenders walk among them, but bigger battles lie ahead. Chaos erupts under the pale moon of Incheon as terror grips the streets once again. Desperate cries fill the night as citizens realize a nightmare is unfolding before their eyes. A massive blue Xenoterran looms over the crowd, dangling a terrified baby in its grip. The local authorities have already been swept aside, leaving civilians utterly defenseless. Onlookers freeze in horror. No normal human force cannot halt a threat of this scale. It seems like game over for everyone trapped in the narrow street. Before the monster can act, a swift strike cuts through the air and slices the creature's arm clean off. Red Kool-Aid sprays across the pavement as the limb disconnects. Out of nowhere steps an unconventional fighter wearing goggles, a cap, and polka dot shorts. He smoothly retrieves the falling child before the blue monster can react. Suddenly, a ferocious red Xenoterran charges into the alley, targeting the mother and child. The ground trembles under its heavy strides as it bursts forward. The mother shields her baby, bracing for impact as the beast closes in, but the masked defender steps directly between them without hesitating. With insane explosive force, he lands a counterpunch straight onto the monster's face. The shockwave shatters the concrete beneath their feet. The red beast attempts to snap back, but the hero's speed is completely overwhelming. He unleashes a relentless barrage of heavy blows right into its torso. He drives forward with sheer physical power, breaking the creature's guard instantly. The monster is blasted backward across the street, thoroughly outmatched. With both Xenoterrans taken out, quiet settles back over the alleyway. The threats are completely finished, lying motionless on the ground. The stunned crowd stares in complete disbelief at the strange figure standing before them. Slowly, silence gives way to overwhelming cheers and applause. The mother tearfully offers her deepest thanks to the mysterious stranger. He looks back quietly, offering no words or explanation for his incredible strength. With a single powerful leap, he launches skyward and vanishes over the rooftop line. Humanity just received living proof that true superhumans walk among them. In South Korea, giant monster attacks are no longer treated as surprises. They are categorized just like weather, unstoppable natural disasters that human hands simply cannot prevent. Inside Soyeon High School, nobody is paying attention to the teacher's lesson. The kids are all glued to their phones, watching viral footage of a mysterious masked fighter in a white hood clashing with giant beasts in the streets. The quiet class is suddenly shattered by blaring emergency sirens. The Xenoterran Alert Control Center issues an urgent broadcast. A high hazard creature has just breached the port of Inchan. The school goes into emergency lockdown, ordering all students to head straight home. But as everyone evacuates in a panic, whispers spread through the halls, wondering if the hero known as the Superhuman will step in. While his classmates flee, first-year student Kang Lim stays seated until his phone vibrates. It is his handler, Jury, patching through over his earpiece to deliver the target coordinates. Kang Lim quietly excuses himself to the restroom with his gym bag. Inside a closed stall, he pulls on his signature white and red costume, ready for action. Down at the port of Incheon, absolute chaos unfolds. A courageous worker tries to ram a massive blue Xenoterran with a heavy freight truck, but the monster barely feels the collision. With effortless force, the giant creature demolishes the vehicle, leaving two helpless dock workers cowering behind shipping containers with nowhere left to hide. Back at the school, Kang Lim confirms his audio link with Jury. Throwing open the second-story bathroom window, he leaps out and sprints toward the docks at incredible speed. At the port, the creature finds the hiding men. One worker makes a desperate move to protect his friend, but the Xenoterran easily swats him into a steel container, leaving him coughing up red Kool-Aid. Refusing to let his partner suffer alone, the older dock worker steps right into the beast's path. Standing tall, he pleads with the monster to spare them both. Kang Lim vaults across rooftops and highway barriers like a human missile. Jury alerts him that the special Xenoterran defense forces are approaching fast, so he has to end this quickly. Then, something heartbreaking happens at the docks. The Xenoterran stops in its tracks, looking down with sorrowful eyes and whispering that its time is up and it has no choice. As if compelled by an unseen force, the monster grips a massive steel shipping container and hurls it directly at the defenseless dock worker. Right before the container squashes the man, a white streak blurs through the air. Kang Lim catches the flying steel box barehanded, grounding it safely before telling the creature that throwing heavy objects could really hurt someone. Right off the bat, Kang Lim slides onto the dock to confront the beast, lecturing it like a disappointed high school senior about throwing heavy cargo around where people could get hurt. Before going all out, Kang Lim taps his earpiece and asks Jury if he should try opening a dialogue with the monster first. Sitting back at HQ, Jury agrees that if there is even a slim chance one of these creatures can communicate, it could reveal where they come from and why they keep appearing. Kang Lim steps up to the towering blue Xenoterran and asks if it understands human speech, hoping for a peaceful answer. But instead of a conversation, the monster lets out a spine-chilling screech as its flesh turns a violent crimson red, completely abandoning any trace of reason. The enraged red beast crashes down with devastating force, shattering the pavement beneath them in a massive shockwave. Kang Lim barely deflects the monster's ruthless follow-up attacks, quickly realizing that talking to this creature is off the table. Above the port, news helicopters circle the battlefield, broadcasting live footage of the masked superhuman going head-to-head with the disaster-class threat. Ground troops from the special Xenoterran forces arrive at the scene, but their commander orders everyone to hold their fire and stay back. The military commander admits their standard weapons are completely useless against a Xenoterran, making the hooded teenager their only real defensive line. Across the city, crowds gather around giant news screens in complete silence, watching the monstrous beast press Kang Lim into a relentless corner. The red creature matches Kang Lim's insane speed, catching him mid-air and sweeping his feet right out from under him. With a massive impact, the Xenoterran slams Kang Lim straight into a metal structure, causing Juri to scream out his name over the radio comms. As the military holds their breath, fearing the worst, the commander reveals their secret backup, deploying an elite sniper-heavy unit known as Plan B. The heavily armed sniper locks onto the monster's head and pulls the trigger, sending a massive armor-piercing round straight into its face. When the smoke clears, the monster slowly turns its head, glowing eyes locked onto the sniper as its wounds begin to shift, proving this fight is far from over.
The Xenoterran shifts its body, swelling with unnatural power as it prepares to crush everything in its path. Incheon Port becomes a war zone, and standard human defenses are about to be put to the test.
From a high vantage point overlooking the docks, a Special Forces sniper locks onto the Crimson Beast. He pulls the trigger, unleashing a heavy barrage of armor-piercing rounds. The heavy fire slams direct hits onto the creature's thick hide, but the high-caliber bullets bounce off like pebbles. The sniper looks on in horror as the monster charges forward, completely unfazed.
Plowing right through heavy steel shipping containers like wet cardboard, the creature levels the entire yard. Kang Lim absorbs the violent force of a blow, crashing hard into a dented metal container.
Through the earpiece, Juri checks in to assess the situation, but Kang Lim pulls himself back up, adjusting his white cap with absolute composure as he decides to settle this battle once and for all.
Refusing to give the beast another second, Kang Lim leaps forward with explosive speed. He launches high into the air and drives a devastating axe kick straight into the creature's head. Before the giant can react, Kang Lim grips its monstrous face in mid-air. He channels insane physical force through his upper body, twisting the Xenoterran's massive weight entirely to his command. With supreme leverage, he slams the behemoth headfirst into the harbor floor. The impact shatters reinforced concrete, triggering a massive shockwave that detonates across the shipyard. The violent tremors shake the surrounding city streets, throwing bystanders and tactical teams off balance. Nobody can comprehend how a single person could output energy comparable to a natural earthquake. When the thick dust cloud finally clears, the colossal monster lies motionless inside a crater. Dark fluid seeps out across the ground as its remaining vitality slips away completely. Over the radio link, Juri lets out a breath of relief after confirming the threat level dropped to 0. A disaster capable of wiping out a fleet was brought to a close by a lone high schooler. As Kang Lim stands quietly above the quiet battlefield, watchful eyes observe him from high above. Perched on top of massive shipping cranes, hooded figures have taken in every detail of the battle. They analyze his movements with cold fascination, pointing out that the boy did not even need to tap into his full power to completely dismantle a high-tier calamity. Before Kang Lim can slip away, a strangely dressed man drops from the sky, landing behind him and addressing him by his true hidden identity, Whitecap, the superhuman. Kang Lim stands face to face with the mysterious stranger at the port, a man wearing dangling earrings and a scarred smirk who clearly knows far more than he should. Through the earpiece, Juri watches in disbelief as the stranger calmly greets the hooded hero by name. Down at the perimeter, the commanders and military personnel watch the standoff unfold from a distance, completely baffled by the uninvited visitor standing toe-to-toe with their city's protector. The stranger openly mocks Lim's iconic look, comparing his white cap and red and white outfit to ketchup, while Lim tries to keep his composure and figure out how this intruder slipped past every security check. As online live streams broadcast the confrontation to millions across the globe, the stranger drops a bombshell. Lim is not the only superhuman walking the earth, and other powerful entities are watching from the shadows. Across the world, from America to Scotland and Moscow, other extraordinary individuals react to the unfolding broadcast, sensing a massive shift in the global balance of power. Back at the port, the stranger turns to leave, tossing out casual threats about visiting Lim's school and his pink-haired friend if things get boring. Lim realizes the intruder has intimate details about his civilian life, his mask, and even Jury's earpiece setup, proving that his secret identity is already completely compromised. Refusing to let the threat walk away, Lim steps forward and initiates combat, determined to settle this right here before his loved ones are put in danger. The clash instantly shatters the ground beneath them as both fighters unleash blinding speed, shockwaves ripping through the port as they trade devastating blows. Lim presses the offensive with lightning-fast strikes, but the grinning stranger blocks every punch with ease, teasing that Lim isn't even fighting at his true potential. The creature calls Kang Lim a softie right to his face, laughing off the tension of the battle, but Kang Lim holds his ground, refusing to let up the pressure. The Xenoterran proposes a strange bargain, acknowledging Kang Lim's unusual strength. It knows they cannot easily settle this here without leveling the entire sector. Jury warns Kang Lim over the earpiece to keep his cool against the psychological games. These beings are intelligent, and they know how to exploit hesitation. Instead of fighting to the bitter end, the creature introduces itself as Nanki. It asks for a temporary truce, pointing out the absurdity of tearing each other apart for no reason. Kang Lim demands answers, asking who they really are and what they want from the city. Nanki gives a cryptic smile, retreating into a pink cocoon-like state before vanishing entirely. The military commanders watching from afar are baffled by the sudden disappearance. They expected a bloodbath, but instead, the Xenoterrans simply packed up and left. Kang Lim slips away from the bewildered rescue workers, leaving behind only the stunned recovery crews. Jury reminds him that the mission parameters have shifted. At the command center, General Ojin Baik chews out his subordinates over the heavy collateral damage. The weapons are proving entirely inadequate against these evolving threats. Ojin Baik insists that securing the fallen Xenoterran carcass remains the absolute highest priority. The research teams need every scrap of genetic material they can salvage. Transport aircraft descend onto the port of Incheon to haul the massive remains away. The ground forces secure the perimeter, barking orders to keep all unauthorized personnel back. A frantic phone call breaks through the secure lines, reporting mounting civilian casualties and rising tensions. The leadership is losing control of the public narrative. Gerald Marcus takes the stage at a high-profile press event, playing the part of a confident visionary. He frames the crisis as a stepping stone toward a hopeful new generation. Back at the docks, the massive cargo aircraft seals its doors and prepares for takeoff. But up above, watching from a towering container, a familiar white-capped figure realizes where the cargo is really heading. The battle at the port reaches its absolute peak as the masked fighter delivers a devastating overhead strike to the towering Xenoterran. The sheer force of the impact shakes the entire waterfront, sending shockwaves rippling through the concrete. Pinned to the ground, the massive creature desperately tries to bargain for its existence. It stammers out a plea, begging for mercy and offering information about a mysterious figure named Sherlock. Instead of listening, the hero delivers the ultimate finisher, shattering the creature with overwhelming power. In moments, the colossal threat is completely gone, leaving only silence behind. Back home, Kang Lim wakes up exhausted in his printed bedsheets, blissfully unaware that his heroic alter ego is trending all over the morning news. He drags himself out of bed, rushing to make it to school on time. Walking through the streets of Incheon, Kang Lim overhears his classmates discussing the mysterious masked vigilante. Everyone has an opinion on the hero, but nobody suspects the tired student walking right beside them. The school halls are far from safe, however, as ruthless delinquents from the Kundo crew patrol the corridors. Led by intimidating enforcers, these bullies have taken over Sion High School in the absence of normal order. Kang Lim finally arrives at the school gates, looking thoroughly wrecked from his secret double life. Little does he know, navigating the social hierarchy of Seon High might be just as exhausting as fighting monsters. Inside the classroom, Jinju Yo immediately starts nagging Kang Lim about his exhausted state and his messy appearance. Their familiar banter hides a deeper bond, but trouble is never far behind. Far out in the open Atlantic Ocean, miles away from the city drama, a lone fisherman on a small boat spots a massive disturbance in the deep blue water. Something colossal is moving beneath the waves, hinting that the worst is yet to come. Out on the open sea, an ordinary fisherman takes a moment to check on a handcrafted toy meant for his daughter's birthday. It is a quiet, human pause on the water before the world reminds everyone how fragile peace really is. Without warning, a massive displacement tears through the surface beneath the boat. A colossal xenoterran erupts from the ocean depths with devastating force, shattering the vessel into splinters. Back at Seoyeon High School, the atmosphere is entirely different as Changshik Park stands before his classroom. He shifts the lesson away from standard textbooks to confront the terrifying reality of the Xenoterrans shaping their era. The lecture breaks down the global statistics of these disasters, tracking every major encounter across the world. Korea itself has endured multiple devastating incursions, turning the port city into a front line. Amidst the tragedy, humanity found a flicker of hope in the mysterious masked figure known as Whitecap. Government conspiracy theories swirl, but the vigilante remains the sole unknown variable fighting back. The lecture revisits the darkest day in the nation's history, the Dandelion Attack. A monstrous entity named Heptahorn left overwhelming devastation in its wake before vanishing completely into thin air. Government officials and defense strategists remain baffled by the lingering mysteries of that catastrophe. The connections between the creatures, the mysterious masked fighter, and Heptahorn defy all conventional explanation. As the school bell rings to dismiss the students, teacher Changshik Park packs up his things. Behind the stern educator persona lies a tired father driving home to see his beloved son. Out on the open ocean, the quiet peace of a fishing trawler is shattered when a Xenoterran strikes without warning. The crew's frantic mayday call cuts off mid-sentence as the creature overpowers them entirely. The attack leaves nothing behind but silence and drifting wreckage. The radio crackles with unanswered static, signaling that the vessel has completely vanished from the grid. Thousands of miles away, the luxury cruise ship the Opera sails on in total ignorance. Passengers lounge by the pool and enjoy their holiday under sunny skies, completely unaware of the looming disaster. Back on the bridge, the captain receives urgent word about the missing fishing trawler floating nearby. Realizing lives might hang in the balance, orders are instantly given to alter course for a swift rescue mission. When the cruise ship reaches the coordinates, the rescue party finds only a gruesome scene of floating debris. The fishing vessel has been torn apart, hiding a horrifying threat waiting just beneath the surface. Far from the ocean, Seoyeon High School is wrapped in its usual noisy lunch hour. Students crowd the cafeteria, gossiping about the school's notorious upperclassmen and the untouchable Kundo crew. Kang Lim sits quietly by himself, ignoring the social hierarchy completely. While everyone else obsesses over rank and reputation, he keeps his head down and focuses on his own meal. An unexpected classmate named Cheol Kwan approaches Kang Lim and strikes up an easy conversation. Instead of bullying or intimidation, Cheol Kwan offers genuine friendship and even offers to teach martial arts. Peace never lasts long in the hallways as aggressive upperclassmen from the Kundo crew crash the scene. They mistake kindness for weakness and decide to teach the newcomers a harsh lesson. Around the world, authorities are panicking behind closed doors as global threats escalate. High-ranking officials argue frantically over stalled responses and mounting casualties that keep rising by the hour. Special operatives gather in a secure briefing room to receive urgent new orders. Belen Withrow steps forward, knowing that time has completely run out for everyone involved. The terrifying truth is finally revealed to the command team. The massive luxury cruise ship carrying over 3,000 innocent souls has just been ambushed by a Xenoterran in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. The stakes rise globally as high-ranking officials brief on an unprecedented disaster unfolding at sea. A massive cruise ship carrying thousands of passengers has been ambushed by a Xenoterran right in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Tensions flare inside the briefing room as leaders realize the horrifying scale of the threat. This is not just another localized city incident. It is a floating trap with thousands of lives hanging in the balance. Preparations move at breakneck speed as operatives mobilize for deployment. James and the team prepare to move out, knowing that every single second wasted brings the catastrophe closer to total devastation. Elsewhere, the legendary superhuman makes a quiet entrance, leaving powerful figures breathless in his wake. Just standing in the same room with him feels like suffocating under immense pressure. In the shadows, mysterious players watch the unfolding events with keen interest. There are bounties on heads, secrets in the dark, and a growing web of chaos that extends far beyond the public eye. The conversation turns cryptic as hidden agendas surface amidst the global panic. Whoever is pulling the strings intends to use the unfolding catastrophe to shift the balance of power entirely. Back at the command sector, the team boards their transport aircraft. They buckle in for a high speed flight across the ocean, racing against the clock that is ticking down far too fast. The LC 100 fires up its engines for takeoff, built to cut through the sky at incredible speeds. It is the fastest helicopter available to reach the stranded cruise ship before it is too late. A tactical map breaks down the grim reality of the operation. The cruise ship, the Opera, is located hundreds of miles out at sea, leaving them with an estimated flight time of 2 grueling hours. The details of the distress call reveal a nightmare scenario. A naval base received a panicked signal from the Opera, confirming an active Xenoterran assault raging through the luxury vessel. Communication with the strike team has already gone dangerously dark. Elite Navy SEALs and submarine forces were deployed to the ship, but all contact mysteriously vanished 20 minutes in. The sheer impossibility of an entire elite task force being wiped out in minutes stuns the commanders. As a drastic backup measure, tactical nuclear warheads are prepped on standby to prevent the creature from reaching the mainland. Pearl struggles to keep her composure as the grim reality of the mission sets in. With no way of knowing if anyone is still alive on that ship, tough choices have to be made. Determined not to surrender to fear, Pearl steels herself for what is coming. She vows to head straight into the storm and put an end to the nightmare. Far away at Seoyeon High School in Incheon, local hallways hide their own volatile tensions. A bully corners a student, demanding submission and throwing around threats without a care in the world. Before the intimidation can escalate further, an unexpected voice cuts through the hallway. A classmate steps forward to intervene, setting up a confrontation that brings trouble right to their doorstep. School corridors can be brutal, but Kang Lim's classmates are about to learn what happens when local enforcers step out of line. A massive thug grabs a student by the hair, demanding lunch money, completely unaware of the quiet power sitting right beside him. Chel Kwan storms into the classroom like he owns the building, flanked by his notorious gang. Students scatter in absolute terror, whispering about the Kundo crew and the terrifying hierarchy that rules their halls. Chell thinks he can bully anyone he pleases, even grabbing a female student by the collar with total impunity. But before he can escalate, a calm, disciplined hand reaches out to intervene. Kang Lim stands up to the giant bully without a single ounce of fear in his eyes. The classroom holds its collective breath as the masked vigilante of Incheon demonstrates that high school politics mean nothing when you punch above humanity's weight class. With one lightning-fast strike, Kang Lim sends Chel Kwan crashing backward across the room. The brute's cronies watch in stunned disbelief as their untouchable leader takes a devastating kick straight to the jaw. Chel tries to recover, coughing up blood and rage, but Kang Lim meets every attempted counter with casual, terrifying ease. The fight is completely one-sided, a stark reminder that ordinary thugs are out of their depth. Left humiliated on the floor, Chell realizes he is completely outmatched by the unassuming first-year student. The Kundo crew's terrifying reputation takes a massive hit as their enforcer is left gasping for air. Word travels fast through the criminal underground, reaching Mu Namgung, the dreaded baby blue boss of the Kundo crew. Hearing that Chell was humbled by a mere teenager puts the crime syndicate on high alert. While human syndicates play turf wars in the hallways, real terror descends from the stormy skies above Incheon. A military helicopter cuts through the rain, transporting high-level operatives toward a grim maritime crime scene. Pearl and James suit up inside the tactical chopper, preparing for a high-stakes deployment. Communication lines open up as the team synchronizes their gear, bracing for whatever monstrosity awaits them on the water. With a powerful leap, the operatives exit the aircraft into the dark, stormy night, descending rapidly toward the target zone. The sheer velocity of their drop highlights the lethal nature of their covert mission. They touch down on the deck of a massive cruise ship, resting silently in the moonlight. But the moment their boots hit the metal, the scale of the horror before them becomes completely undeniable. The entire ship is littered with casualties, eliminated instantly by overwhelming blunt force trauma. Pearl stares in grim realization at the carnage, confirming the unmistakable handiwork of a Xenoterran. The massive cruise liner at the port proves to be a labyrinth of complex structures, turning a rescue mission into a tactical infiltration. Splitting up is the only viable strategy to cover the ship's massive multi-level layout before the threat entirely slips away. With communication split and coordination vital, the operatives prepare to clear both the upper and lower decks simultaneously. Navigating the towering vertical walls of the ship's interior, agility becomes just as important as raw power. Breaking into the lower storage compartments, the search for survivors pushes deeper into the silent, shadowed depths of the vessel. Silence blankets the fourth basement level, save for the heavy footsteps echoing through empty aisles of stacked cargo. The grim reality of the disaster sets in as the control room reveals a devastating scene of loss without a living soul in sight. Radio signals begin to warp and break down, cutting off vital communication lines just when stability matters most. A breakthrough occurs in the deeper compartments when a lone survivor is finally discovered hiding away among the boxes. Static fills the earpieces entirely, leaving the operatives completely isolated as the environment turns hostile around them. Checking in on the civilian in the storage bay brings a brief sense of relief, masking the creeping dread closing in from the shadows. A heavy scent of crimson hangs thick in the air near the banquet hall, warning of danger far worse than simple destruction. The supposed survivor speaks with an eerie familiarity, defying the logic of how anyone could traverse the locked decks so quickly. In a horrifying fraction of a second, the comforting facade shatters entirely as the true nature of the threat is unmasked. The combat in the port building reaches a frantic pitch as Kang Lim evades a sudden, blinding strike. He realizes this Xenoterran is no ordinary brute. Its shape-shifting defies everything the authorities understand about these disasters. A devastating counterattack shreds the surroundings, sending debris flying across the room. Kang Lim analyzes the creature's strange anatomy, trying to find a weakness in its fluid, shifting form before it can adapt further. The Xenoterran lunges with terrifying speed, crashing through interior walls and turning the hallway into a dust storm. Kang Lim dodges by a fraction of a second, feeling the sheer pressure of the creature's relentless assault. Dropping his damaged outer garment, Kang Lim prepares for close quarters. He ties off his injured arm, refusing to let the pain slow him down as the true test of this confrontation begins. Outside, the tactical situation grows even more chaotic as transport helicopters arrive overhead. The command center tracks the escalating destruction, realizing the storm inside the building is spiraling completely out of control. Elsewhere in the port zone, the famous hero Saint Pearl arrives on the scene to secure the terrified civilians. People trapped in the storage areas look up in awe, believing their savior has finally come to rescue them. Back inside the conflict zone, St. Pearl navigates the wrecked corridors where glass shatters under heavy footfalls. The sheer scale of the disaster zone proves that normal emergency responders are far out of their depth. Kang Lim and the Xenoterran trade brutal blows in a devastating exchange of close quarters power. The creature crashes through the floor, but its ability to maintain its original form during combat makes finishing it an agonizing puzzle. Determined to end the threat before innocent lives are caught in the crossfire, Kang Lim resolves to finish the fight. His eyes flare with intense energy as he locks onto the creature's remaining defenses. With a ferocious burst of power, Kang Lim drives his attack straight through the Xenoterran's defenses. The creature shatters apart in a violent explosion of impact, sending shockwaves through the chamber. Breathing heavily amidst the ruins, Kang Lim picks up a discarded glass bottle. He channels his latent energy directly into the fragile object, transforming it into a makeshift weapon with an eerie, crystalline glow. The battle beneath the docks continues with terrifying power, as Della Withrow tests the limits of an uncanny ability. Liquid freezes and hardens into diamond-dense projectiles with a single thought, turning everyday moisture into a deadly weapon. Della trades blows with the massive Xenoterran, unleashing explosive force that shatters the concrete around them. Every strike carries the weight of a freight train, but the creature absorbs the punishment and strikes back with savage fury. The sheer scale of the combat rattles the lower decks, sending heavy impacts echoing through the facility. Della presses the advantage, refusing to give the creature an inch of breathing room in the chaotic underground space. Up above, monitoring systems track the violent spikes in energy as military helicopters mobilize overhead. The command center watches the feeds closely, realizing this encounter is spiraling far beyond standard parameters. Down in the depths, the strain begins to show as Della pushes the ability to its absolute limit. Vision blurs and breath grows shallow under the immense physical and mental toll of maintaining such raw power. The Xenoterran capitalizes on the momentary fatigue, unleashing a sudden and vicious counterattack. A brutal clash of freezing energy leaves Della reeling, gasping for air as the tide of the fight shifts. Even so, Della refuses to stay down, rallying willpower to reshape the frozen armor and turn the tables once more. The sheer destructive capability on display continues to defy all known scientific understanding. With a swift, devastating motion, the battle seemingly reaches its climax as a lethal strike lands true. But as the dust settles over the quiet floor, a chilling realization grips the room. The danger was never alone. The dust settles over the wreckage at the port of Incheon as the brutal reality of the Xenoterran threat sinks in. What looked like a solitary disaster turns out to be something far more coordinated and terrifying. Back at headquarters, Jury scrambles over the computer banks as the tactical radar goes completely haywire. Systems flare with warning alerts, signaling that the situation is rapidly spiraling out of control. The hero bounds into action, red boots kicking off the walls with explosive momentum. But the enemy is already waiting, muscles bulging and ready to shatter the concrete in a blinding shockwave. Tensions flare among the fighters as they catch their breath in the aftermath of the ambush. They realize these creatures are adapting, growing more dangerous with every single encounter. A quiet moment on a park bench contrasts sharply with the looming catastrophe overhead. Emotions run high, and keeping a cool head is easier said than done when the world is crumbling. Suddenly, the Crimson threat surges back to life with a terrifying twitch. Power ripples through its twisted form as it prepares to unleash absolute devastation once more. Blow for blow, the battlefield erupts into flying debris and bone-rattling impacts. Neither side is willing to back down, turning the ruined streets into a war zone. Red Kool-Aid splashes across the pavement in a visceral clash of raw strength. A brutal hand grabs hold, turning the tide of the skirmish in a flash of pure aggression. The monstrous adversary is hoisted into the air, struggling against an insurmountable grip. Every fiber of muscle strains as the hero delivers a crushing counterattack. The fight in the facility reaches a brutal crescendo as the combatants trade devastating strikes, walls shattering under the sheer force of their blows. Every impact echoes like thunder through the ruins, showing just how outmatched normal humans would be in this arena. The masked fighter presses the advantage with blistering speed, landing punishing blows that send shockwaves across the concrete floor. Even as the adversary tries to counter, the overwhelming momentum keeps them firmly on the defensive. High above the ground, the military command center is locked in a fierce debate over a looming crisis. Tensions flare as officials argue over whether to authorize a catastrophic strike or trust the operatives currently deployed in the field. The clock is ticking down toward an irreversible decision as the leadership weighs the safety of thousands against the risk of total disaster. Arguments turn heated, with every voice in the room demanding a different path forward. The president finally steps in to halt the impending strike, choosing a path of restraint over annihilation. But the shadow of doubt remains heavy in the room, knowing how thin the margin for error truly is. Down on the ground, another formidable combatant arrives on the scene to survey the aftermath and handle lingering threats. There is no time to rest as the hidden dangers lurking in the shadows refuse to stay quiet. A sudden ambush shatters the temporary calm, forcing the hero into a desperate struggle against a vicious surprise attacker. Every second counts as they grapple in the dust, fighting for control of the situation. With a final, decisive effort, the threat is neutralized and the dust begins to settle over the ruined battlefield. Looking out toward the ocean, a massive vessel looms in the distance, setting the stage for the next phase of the crisis. The dust clears at the port as the devastating impact leaves a massive crater in the ground. Control rooms panic as emergency alarms blare across the facility, struggling to comprehend the sheer scale of the disruption. Amidst the smoking ruins and fractured concrete, a figure stands tall in a glowing portal. The hero surveys the wreckage with cold intensity, immediately drawing the stunned gaze of observers nearby. Surveillance feeds capture every movement as military personnel and operators watch in absolute disbelief. The arrival of this unknown power changes the entire strategic equation in a single moment. Deep underground in secure bunkers, high-ranking officials scramble for answers as communications flood in. Tensions reach a breaking point behind closed doors as panic spreads through the command chain. Arguments erupt in the conference room as leaders clash over how to handle the unprecedented crisis. Every faction realizes the old rules no longer apply in this terrifying new reality. News broadcasts flash live updates across the nation regarding the grand cruise ship stranded at port. Reporters flood the scene while everyday citizens watch the unfolding disaster on their screens. Far from the chaos, daily life continues with its own mundane frustrations and ordinary arguments. A young man hastily slurps down a quick meal while reacting to the overwhelming noise from the television. The broadcast drops a bombshell piece of news that stops everyone in their tracks. Mention of a fallen superhuman sends a profound shockwave of grief and disbelief across the entire globe. Disbelief turns into heavy mourning as people struggle to accept the vulnerability of their protectors. If someone of that magnitude could fall, no one is truly safe from the encroaching darkness. In the shadows, shrouded figures discuss past encounters with powerful entities like St. Pearl. Whispers of secret alliances and hidden rivalries reveal a much deeper web of influence at play. Memories of past clashes highlight the terrifying abilities possessed by these legendary figures. Their interactions were never friendly, defined instead by a mutual sizing up of lethal power. A frantic phone call shatters the quiet as an urgent message cuts through the night air. Someone is trying desperately to reach a high-ranking contact who is proving frustratingly difficult to find. The burner phone finally connects, delivering a piece of news so staggering it leaves the seasoned operative speechless. Gellam's body has completely vanished, setting the stage for an unimaginable crisis. The cleanup from the opera disaster reveals an immediate, chilling problem. A high-ranking body has gone completely missing. High-level operators scramble on encrypted lines as they realize someone breached the secured perimeter. Behind the scenes, money troubles are hitting closer to home for our young hero. Kang Lim wanders the streets with a pink-haired persona, trying to figure out how to pay the bills while juggling a double life. Desperate for quick cash, a local arm wrestling tournament catches his eye with a massive prize pool. It is risky, but when rent is due and funds are gone, a teenager has to get creative. Back at command headquarters, investigators piece together the terrifying scale of the Marine attack. Multiple Xenoterrans were involved, displaying tactical behaviors that human authorities never expected. The analysis of the creature types uncovers a shocking trait: shape-shifting capabilities. One of the Xenoterrans was able to mimic human features, turning a standard extermination into an infiltration nightmare. Investigators review the sterile containment chambers holding the captured specimens. These monsters are not just random natural disasters, they are biological weapons carrying traits from across the Earth. The central mystery deepens when the team confirms that Gellen's body vanished into thin air without a trace. Someone on that ship took the corpse, and they managed to slip past every government rescue team. Surveillance footage will take a week to review, but the leadership refuses to let the thief slip away. Whoever stole the fallen Xenoterran is playing a dangerous game, and the entire Kundo crew is mobilizing to hunt them down. Kang Lim trades his heavy superhero burdens for a very different kind of arena. He enters the Ali Bay arm wrestling tournament, drawn in by that massive cash prize. Jory stays on comms, making sure Kang Lim keeps his identity under wraps. The crowd is packed with intense competitors and loud managers. Wearing a bright Ketchup Man uniform as a goofy disguise, Kang Lim stretches for the preliminary rounds. He has to dial down his superhuman power so he does not snap anyone's arm clean off. The matches kick off with explosive energy across multiple tables. Kang Lim grips his opponent's hand, careful to apply just enough force to secure a swift victory. Right outside the venue, a sudden explosion rocks the street. Ambulances race past as another Xenoterran emergency shakes the city once again. Kang Lim checks on his defeated opponent with genuine sportsmanship. Meanwhile, the preliminary rounds wrap up and the tournament officials announce the final 16 fighters. Heavyweights, martial arts masters, and even a traveling monk step into the spotlight. The competition is suddenly stacked with terrifyingly strong contenders. Kang Lim learns his official number for the main bracket is 82. As the tournament board lights up with the final matchups, the real test is about to begin. The massive arm wrestling tournament is underway, filling the venue with roaring crowds and intense matchups. Competitors are pushing their limits, but Kang Lim remains the quiet wild card in the background. High above the clouds, passengers whisper about the eccentric passenger aboard their flight. It turns out Matt Dion, a massive hero, is trying to stay low-key while flying to his next destination. Back at the tournament, the competitors size each other up with hostile glares. Trash talk flies back and forth as heavyweights prepare for brutal clashes at the table. Sunglasses come off and the real pressure sets in across the brackets. Kang Lim sits quietly, watching the overwhelming energy churn around him like a coiled spring. Match after match, the tables shudder under the sheer force of the fighters. Upsets ripple through the crowd as favored champions get completely overwhelmed. With a thunderous slam, another match concludes in a split second. The sheer power on display leaves the spectators completely stunned. Drama unfolds off the stage as a rival fighter is disqualified for getting too aggressive outside the matches. Tensions spill over into the corridors. A sudden ambush in the hallway leads to a lightning-fast beatdown. Kundo steps away, leaving opponents unconscious on the floor without a second glance. Spectators whisper about the violence happening behind the scenes, but the tournament organizers push forward. The brackets are updated as the semifinals approach. Kang Lim steps up to the table for his semifinal match against an intimidating opponent. The trash talk starts immediately, but Kang Lim remains unflinchingly calm. The referee signals the start, and hands lock in a fierce grip. In an instant, Kang Lim applies a shocking amount of pressure, making his opponent cry out in sudden agony. The match ends in an unexpected medical collapse as the opponent's hand gives out completely under the strain. Kang Lim is declared the victor, advancing straight to the grand finals. Miles away at Incheon International Airport, the peaceful sky is suddenly shattered. A massive Xenoterran bursts onto the tarmac, signaling an emergency that will demand every ounce of a hero's strength. The arm wrestling tournament is heating up, with Kang Lim stepping into the arena under an alias. The tension across the table is palpable as the finals kick off. Master Lee puts up a ferocious fight, his opponent comparing the sheer pressure to wrestling an absolute elephant, but Kang Lim holds his ground with terrifying calm. Number 82 takes the crown, winning the grand prize. Instead of keeping the cash, Kang Lim decides to donate the entire reward to charity. Master Lee breaks down in tears over his defeat, but the Grand Master is there to remind him that a true martial artist never truly falls. Outside the venue, Master Lee hands over his official business card, sensing immense martial arts talent in both Kang Lim and Juri. An elderly man approaches the boys, casually snatching the trophy right out of their hands. The old man is none other than Bang Wan-oh, founder and Grand Master of Seopwu Dojang. The Grand Master recognizes Kang Lim beneath the mask, noting how his senses and intuition are sharper than a spring. He leaves an open invitation to find him at Mount Yongpo. Suddenly, the atmosphere at Incheon International Airport shifts dramatically. A massive Xenoterran breaks onto the runway, unleashing deafening roars. Kang Lim and Juri wait at the arrival gate, wondering why they bothered with the tournament. They have no idea what is about to crash down on them. Emergency alarms pierce the air across the terminal. The Xenoterran Alert Control Center issues an immediate evacuation warning as a monstrous creature is spotted on the active runway. Out on the open tarmac, the disaster is already underway as a massive blue Xenoterran sprints across the runway. Flight KC-7744 is coming in for a routine landing, completely unaware that a catastrophic collision is barreling straight toward them. Meanwhile, Kang Lim is rushing through the bustling airport terminal trying to find a quiet spot. Annoyed by the chatter and the glowing earpieces, he slips away from the panicking crowds into the nearest restroom. Inside the locker room, Lim strips off his civilian clothes with practiced urgency. He pulls on his makeshift hero gear, strapping on the hood and goggles that transform him into the city's masked protector. Up in the air traffic control tower, the operators suddenly spot the giant creature on the active runway. Panic sets in as they desperately try to wave off the incoming commercial flight. The cockpit crew realizes the danger far too late as the Xenoterran charges right at their landing path. The pilot shouts in horror, desperately pulling back on the controls to avoid total disaster. With a deafening crash, the monster leaps upward and slams directly into the landing gear of the descending plane. Metal groans and shatters under the brutal impact, sending violent shockwaves through the cabin. Passengers are thrown from their seats as the aircraft violently scrapes against the asphalt. Sparks fly in every direction as the damaged plane struggles to maintain control on the smoking runway. The Xenoterran lands heavily on the tarmac, shaking off the impact and turning its gaze toward the terrified passengers pouring out of the crippled aircraft. It rips through heavy airport machinery like paper, closing in on the helpless civilians. Just as the monster grabs a heavy forklift to hurl at the survivors, a towering shadow descends from the sky. With an explosive landing, Kang Lim arrives right in the nick of time, sending heavy debris flying across the concrete. The massive forklift is launched high into the air by the sheer force of the impact. The Xenoterran pauses, turning its glowing eyes toward the masked teenager standing defiantly on the runway. Kang Lim touches down at the port, standing face to face with the towering Xenoterran. The creature stares down at the masked teenager, recognizing the white cap of the superhuman immediately. Instead of backing down, the massive entity lunges forward with terrifying speed. Kang Lim reacts instantly, dodging the initial strike as heavy machinery gets tossed through the air. The creature hurls a massive container straight at him like a toy. Kang Lim stands his ground, winding up a punch to shatter the incoming metal obstacle into pieces. A high-impact collision sends shockwaves across the concrete tarmac. Kang Lim is blown backward by the sheer concussive force, landing heavily on his feet. Through his earpiece, Jury checks in with a frantic voice, demanding to know his status. Kang Lim taps the communicator, trying to catch his breath after taking the heavy hit. Back at the command setup, Jury watches through the tower screens in disbelief. Seeing Kang Lim fighting without his uniform shirt raises immediate concerns about safety and exposure. Jury insists he needs to pull back immediately before things get out of hand. Kang Lim refuses to back down, staying fully locked onto the looming threat. The Xenoterran unleashes a ferocious flurry of blows, testing the young hero's defenses. Kang Lim blocks and parries, feeling the bone-rattling impact of every single strike. A sudden counterkick catches Kang Lim off guard, sending him skidding across the ground. The sheer physical power of the monster continues to push him to his absolute limits. Refusing to stay down, Kang Lim charges back into the fray with a fierce counterattack. Both combatants trade devastating blows in a high-speed clash of pure strength. Jury urges caution through the earpiece as the battle reaches a fever pitch. The cameras are broadcasting the fight live, meaning the entire city is now watching every move. Kang Lim insists on staying to finish what he started, refusing to abandon the fight. Jury worries about the exposure, knowing their secret is rapidly slipping out into the open. As the dust settles slightly, the creature lets out a strange, low rumble. The monster starts uttering sounds that are far too complex to be mere beastly roars. Suddenly, the sky above begins to distort, filling with strange airborne anomalies descending toward the port. The situation escalates past a simple one-on-one fight into an entirely new nightmare. Eggs are dropping from the sky across the port of Incheon like an apocalyptic hailstorm. Each heavy metallic orb shatters open against the tarmac, spilling fresh nightmares right onto the ground. Inside the terminal, the red-haired student watches in total shock as a Xenoterran bursts straight through the glass roof. The situation at the port is escalating far beyond a standard alert. Commanders watch the spreading chaos from their secure monitors, tracking the massive spike in Xenoterran numbers. They know the Whitecap hero is out there, but nobody is sure if a single teenager can handle this swarm alone. Down in the concourse, the newly hatched creature cracks its shell wide open and immediately scans its surroundings. Its jaw unhinges with a terrifying roar, ready to tear through anyone in sight. Kang Lim scrambles backward in a panic, desperately trying to contact Jury through his earpiece. The static crackles furiously, cutting off communication just when he needs support the most. Without waiting for confirmation, Kang Lim pulls down his mask and surges forward into action. He knows the spawn must be intercepted before they reach civilians trapped in the terminal. The White Cap crashes into the Crimson Xenoterran with brutal concussive force. They trade devastating blows that shatter the surrounding concrete into fine dust. Running low on smoke bombs, Kang Lim retreats down the hallway to regroup. To his absolute shock, he stumbles right into a civilian girl who was left behind during the evacuation. A towering Xenoterran stalks down the corridor toward them, its massive claws clicking against the floor. Panic sets in as the monster corners them with nowhere left to run. The creature lashes out, sending Kang Lim crashing hard into the vending machines. Blood splatters across the floor as the brutal impact leaves the young hero reeling. Jury finally arrives on the scene, looking down at the battered teenager with a quiet, sorrowful realization. The weight of fighting these monsters completely alone has taken a devastating toll on Kang Lim. Stepping past the injured student, a fresh reinforcement rolls up his sleeves with red gloves ready. The special Xenoterran forces are finally stepping onto the front line to support the Whitecap. The battle at the port rages on as the fighters coordinate their moves. Every unit is ordered to target the hatched spawnlings before things get out of hand. Preparations are underway for a risky medical procedure. A specialized surgeon is hooking up a completely new weapon system to the fighter's arm. The mechanics behind the upgrade are explained in detail. This isn't just a regular tool, it's a cathode rail packing an immense amount of energy. A scientist presents the Natum capsule, the only power source stable enough to run the weapon. There is a catch, though, as the clinical testing was rushed and the capsule has a very limited duration. With the device locked and loaded, the fighter prepares for action alongside an unexpected ally. A combat-ready dog fitted with tactical gear sprints forward to join the fray. Activating the system takes an immediate physical toll. The immense power surging through the arm causes severe pain, but there is no time to hesitate. The newly upgraded weapon is unleashed with devastating force. A creature is taken out instantly as the sheer velocity of the attack tears through the area. Inside a nearby airplane, passengers feel the violent tremors shaking the fuselage. Panic spreads quickly as everyone realizes something catastrophic is happening outside. Arguments break out among the terrified travelers inside the cabin. Some panic and demand action, while others urge everyone to stay calm and find makeshift weapons. Suddenly, the exterior of the plane is breached. A Xenoterran bursts directly into the cabin, sending the passengers scattering in absolute terror. The fighter wastes no time rushing to the rescue. Another capsule is quickly swapped in to maintain power as the confrontation begins. Striking a mature Xenoterran takes more than just brute force. A single hit isn't enough, meaning every strike has to land precisely on the exact same spot to be effective. More threats emerge from the shadows as the sound of battle echoes through the area. With resources dwindling and only a single capsule left, the situation grows increasingly desperate. Chaos erupts in the middle of a passenger transport as a towering, green-skinned Xenoterran bursts into the cabin. Terrified passengers scatter in every direction, screaming as the creature looms over them with terrifying strength. Just when all hope seems lost inside the cabin, a vibrant caped figure crashes onto the scene. Matt Dillon, known to the world as the celebrated actor from the Ketchup Man films, steps forward to confront the beast. The passengers are completely stunned to realize the cinematic hero is the real deal. Matt trades blows with the massive Xenoterran, proving his incredible strength goes far beyond movie sets and theatrical stunts. With a powerful punch, Matt sends the creature flying out of the transport and onto the tarmac. He strikes a dramatic superhero pose, playing up his cinematic flair for the watching crowd. Matt delivers a swift and brutal sequence of strikes, overwhelming the beast with sheer athletic dominance. He trash talks the creature, fully embracing his role as the flashy defender of the peace. Standing tall in his bright yellow and red costume, Matt introduces himself with absolute confidence. The onlookers realize that the man behind the legendary Ketchup Man films is a genuine superhuman protector. Back at headquarters, observers watch the live broadcast in absolute disbelief. The revelation of Matt's true capabilities sends shockwaves through the monitoring room as they analyze the live footage. Elsewhere in the hangar, a determined fighter prepares specialized gear for the final confrontation. Heavy mechanical components lock into place as the operative gets ready to deliver the last strike. The dust settles over the combat zone as Kang Lim catches his breath, panting heavily from the sheer intensity of the clash. The red Xenoterran lies defeated on the ground, but the silence doesn't last long. A tiny dog barks fiercely at the edge of the ruins, completely unfazed by the titanic battle that just unfolded. Amidst the chaos, the masked hero known to the city as the Superhuman stands tall. Suddenly, a towering red entity steps into the arena, radiating an immense, suffocating pressure. Jury warns Kang Lim over the earpiece as the colossal threat narrows its gaze. The formidable newcomer sizes up the teenage hero, noting the iconic white cap with a mix of intrigue and amusement. This is no ordinary Xenoterran. It carries an aura of supreme confidence. Kang Lim locks eyes with the adversary, his expression hardening as he prepares for another brutal round. The ground shakes beneath their feet as both combatants ready themselves for impact. Far away, shadowy observers watch the live feed through monitors, analyzing every movement with chilling detachment. They marvel at the sheer, overwhelming surge of power radiating from the fight. The watchers note that the white cap fights with a raw, almost feral instinct, lacking formal technique yet overflowing with dangerous energy. It is a terrifying display of untamed potential. Back at the docks, the giant red threat closes the distance with terrifying speed, launching a devastating barrage of strikes. Kang Lim meets the onslaught head-on, trading blow for thunderous blow. The precision and sheer force of the hero's counterattacks leave the adversary momentarily staggered. 7 vital areas are struck in the blink of an eye, an impossible feat to track with the naked eye. Yet the massive creature adapts instantly, unleashing a ferocious countertrap that wraps around the hero in a suffocating embrace. Kang Lim is pulled tight into the crushing grip as impact echoes across the port. With an explosive burst of strength, Kang Lim shatters the hold, sending shockwaves through the immediate area. The dust clears to reveal the colossal foe brought crashing down to the concrete. The impossible has happened right in front of the heroes. A Xenoterran is speaking words, questioning the very hierarchy of humans and monsters. The white-haired figure in the red cloak stands calm amidst the chaos, dismissing the tension with eerie composure. This is no ordinary creature of destruction. Battle-hardened fighters stare in disbelief as the entity articulates thoughts, challenging the fundamental laws they have fought by for years. Kang Lim watches closely through his mask, processing every impossible word. The line between monster and sentient being blurs completely. Without warning, raw power erupts across the battlefield as the cloaked entity pulls another formidable creature right out of thin air. Back at headquarters, Jury and the monitoring team struggle to comprehend the impossible data scrolling across their screens. Monsters wearing clothes and wielding spatial abilities shatter every known rule. The sheer scale of this new threat sends shockwaves through the command center. They are no longer just dealing with wild disasters. They are facing an organized, thinking force. Down on the ground, the summoned red creature crashes down violently, clutching its head and desperately trying to piece together fragmented memories. The white-haired visitor looms over the distressed creature with cold indifference, treating it less like an ally and more like a disposable tool. With terrifying casualness, the cloaked figure exerts absolute dominance, snuffing out the summoned creature's resistance in a brutal display of force. Discarding the remains like trash, the white-haired entity turns its cold gaze toward the remaining heroes, showing utter contempt for their presence. Frustrated by the sudden escalation, the veteran fighters step forward, knowing they have to take control before the situation spirals completely out of hand. An impulsive charge meets an immovable wall of hostility. The enemy anticipated every move, turning their offensive strategy into a dangerous trap. As crushing pressure bears down on them, the heroes realize too late that they walked right into the palm of a far superior predator. The battle at the port reaches a fever pitch as Kang Lim unleashes his overwhelming strength. The towering white-haired entity realizes it is completely outmatched by the young hero. With a brutal display of kinetic force, Kang Lim sends shockwaves ripping across the asphalt. The alien opponent struggles just to stay conscious under the relentless barrage. Cornered and severely damaged, the creature decides it has no choice left. It summons a hovering aquatic transport vessel to make a hasty extraction from the battlefield. Before retreating into the sky, the entity issues a chilling warning to Kang Lim. It acknowledges the young hero's raw power, but vows that their next encounter will be the end. Kang Lim watches from the edge of the water as the enemy vessel escapes back into the ocean depths. The fight is over for now, but the mystery of what these creatures are only deepens. Far away from the surface chaos, a deep-sea exploration crew embarks on a routine dive. The submersible pushes past the mesopelagic zone, heading into uncharted darkness. The crew cranks their floodlights to maximum output as the automated sonar goes wild. The monitors reveal massive foreign anomalies littering the absolute bottom of the seafloor. Sonar data indicates an impossible concentration of damaged vessels and anomalous signatures scattered across the ocean floor. Something massive has been resting down here in the abyss. Deep beneath the seafloor, exploration logs tick upward as a massive drill punches straight into the crust. Something ancient and monumental is being unsealed, and the world is about to pay the price. Pandora's box has officially been opened, plunging the public into chaos. News broadcasts flash reports of the Incheon airport disaster, where a record-breaking battle left the tarmac scarred. The media frenzy centers entirely on Matt Dion, the superstar actor revealed to the world as a superhuman. News agencies scramble for exclusive interviews as he prepares to board a flight home. Inside a sterile hospital ward, the aftermath of the violence hits home. Medical equipment beeps steadily while staff rush to stabilize the battered patients brought in from the crisis zone. Doctors assess the critical injuries sustained during the clash. The casualty count is staggering, and the toll on human bodies caught in the path of the Xenoterrans is nearly catastrophic. Emergency responders worked frantically just to keep him breathing. Shrapnel and debris pierced deep into vital organs, leaving his chest wrapped tightly in bandages to stop the internal bleeding. Against all odds, the young fighter pulls through the worst of it. The medical staff calls it a miracle that he survived the critical condition, though his body remains heavily wrapped in gauze. Consciousness returns slowly through a fog of pain and lingering memories. Flashes of the fierce battle replay behind closed eyes as he struggles to piece together how he ended up in this bed. A familiar voice breaks through the silence of the hospital room. Jury stands right beside him, checking in to make sure he is finally awake and safe after the brutal encounter. Sitting up with effort, Kang Lim tries to process the jump from the battlefield to the hospital. He remembers heading toward the airport, only to be ambushed by terrifying creatures. The memory of the ambush remains vivid and terrifying. An octopus-like entity struck from nowhere, and a towering Xenoterran stomped down directly on his head before everything went pitch black. Rescue teams found him collapsed near the airport perimeter, unconscious and near the edge. If not for swift intervention, the story would have ended right there on the tarmac. On the television screen, the news continues to broadcast global panic. Unidentified Xenoterrans are appearing across the world, vanishing into thin air and escalating the fear of what comes next. Yet, amidst all the global confusion, one massive revelation hangs in the air. The mysterious superhuman who drove back the horde and saved Incheon was right under their noses the entire time. Halfway across the world in the United States, a high-stakes government press conference is underway. Reporters argue and push for exclusive access, demanding answers about the superhuman phenomenon. Heavy doors swing open inside the conference facility, drawing every eye in the room. Striding into the hall with an imposing aura, the superstar himself makes a surprise appearance. The shadows shift behind closed doors as Matt faces the heavy presence waiting in the room. There are no illusions left between them now that the masks have come off. St. Pearl steps directly into the tension, addressing the elephant in the room with absolute bluntness. Matt is not impressed by the sudden drop in. The interrogation room feels smaller by the minute as Matt paces, his patience wearing razor thin. He wants answers about why his private life was blown wide open. Representatives from various agencies crowd around, trying to steer the conversation toward a collective strategy. Matt reflects on a life lost to the stage before he ever wore a cape. Matt lays bare his true feelings about his powers, admitting he never felt any grand responsibility to save the world. He just happened to be the one standing in the way. Frustrated by the endless bureaucratic chatter, Matt stands up and turns his back on the table. The room watches him closely, knowing they need his strength. Tempers flare as the heavy truth drops into the conversation. Gellin is gone. The mention of his fallen partner stops Matt dead in his tracks. Anger surges through Matt as he demands to know the details behind Gellin's final moments. The atmosphere shifts from a routine meeting to a deadly serious reckoning. The room reels as the terrifying reality of Gellin's encounter is laid out. That creature was not just a mindless beast, it was sentient, calculating, and dangerously intelligent. Maps light up with terrifying patterns across the globe, proving these attacks are not random occurrences. Commanders are pulling the strings from the shadows. Pearl argues that humanity stands zero chance if superhumans continue to operate in isolation. They need to stand together as a cohesive unit to survive what is coming. Despite the dire warnings, Matt flatly refuses to join any team. He prefers his own company and storms out, leaving the officials scrambling in his wake. Back outside the meeting rooms, handlers try to pitch new media campaigns and PR stunts to keep up appearances. Matt has absolutely zero interest in playing superstar. Far away in the freezing snows of Russia, a heavy figure tracks a fresh target through the bitter cold. Someone new is stepping onto the battlefield, and they are bringing a storm. Crashing through the snow-covered ruins of a European cathedral, the hunter closes in on the objective with lethal intent. There is nowhere left for the target to hide. Deep in a frozen wasteland, two powerful fighters track glowing footprints through the snow. Maxim Basilov and Kirill lead the way, closing in on a target without a single break in their march. The snowstorm beats down on massive cathedral ruins as the operatives press forward. Their mission leaves no room for hesitation in this bitter cold. Flashbacks reveal the partnership behind this hunt, with operatives discussing the heavy toll of taking sides. The world is changing rapidly, and staying neutral is no longer an option. Back in the present, the duo arrives at the looming cathedral doors. Strangely enough, the heavy wooden doors are completely intact, untouched by the usual devastation. They step inside the cavernous, shadowy hall where an eerie silence hangs in the air. Maxim senses that the target is hiding somewhere close in the gloom. Maxim catches a sharp scent lingering in the vast space. The presence of the Xenoterran feels scattered everywhere, making it difficult to pinpoint the exact location. They pause as they spot figures sitting quietly in the cathedral pews, but as Maxim approaches, a horrifying realization sets in. Those people in the pews are not Xenoterrans at all. They are ordinary humans, and they are already gone. Before they can react, a monstrous creature strikes from the shadows with terrifying speed. Kirill is caught completely off guard by the ambush. Maxim leaps into action to protect his comrade, slamming into the disguised thread. The sheer force of the blow echoes through the ancient stone walls. Kirill struggles to catch his breath, realizing that this enemy possesses a disturbing level of cunning. It mimics humanity, hiding in plain sight to lure its prey. Far away from the carnage, a wounded fighter recovers in a hospital bed as news broadcasts report mounting casualties across Russia. The relentless wave of disasters continues to spread globally. Back in the cathedral, Maxim corners the cunning creature and lets loose his frustration. The beast tries to flee, but the operatives are done playing games. With a swift, decisive move, Maxim brings the creature down from the rafters. The battle is finally over, but the grim reality of what they uncovered remains. As the dust settles over the silent cathedral, a strange new detail emerges from the defeated beast. What secrets is this enemy still hiding? The sanctuary of the cathedral becomes a hunting ground as the horned entity faces its pursuers. Kirilo stands tall, assessing the strange creature with chilling calculation while his companion steps up. Carrillo issues his orders with ruthless precision, stepping back as the massive brawler moves in to take care of the beast. The sheer physical presence in the hall is suffocating. With sudden, explosive speed, the monster leaps across the stone floor, closing the distance instantly. The impact of their collision echoes through the towering arches like thunder. A devastating punch is met mid-air, the shockwave rippling outward from the clashing fists. This adversary is far more agile and intelligent than any ordinary threat they have faced. The creature speaks, revealing a terrifying level of sentience and tactical awareness. It addresses Carrillo's forces by name, calling out to Ophir in a display of calculated intellect. Rising to its full height on the altar, the beast radiates an unsettling aura of warrior pride. Carrillo narrows his eyes, realizing this is no mindless beast, but a disciplined combatant. Without warning, brutal violence shatters the momentary tension. The monster strikes with lethal force, catching the enforcers off guard in a sudden burst of red chaos. Baslov takes the brunt of the assault, his face twisting in pure rage as red Kool-Aid splashes across the stone. He clenches his fists, determined to crush the arrogant invader. A relentless barrage of punches lands with bone-crushing force against the creature's armor. Baslov unleashes every ounce of his raw power in a furious retaliation. The combat escalates into a destructive frenzy that tears the cathedral apart. Dust and debris fill the air as both sides trade punishing blows in the enclosed space. Standing amidst the wreckage, the entity pauses, questioning the true identity of its attackers. A strange sense of miscalculation hangs in the air between the combatants. But mercy is entirely off the table as the battle reaches its brutal climax. A lightning-fast strike seals the fate of the encounter in a flash of lethal precision. As the dust settles over the fallen enemy, Carrillo steps forward with crackling energy in his hands. A dangerous new game is about to begin. The battle erupts with sudden, blistering violence as the Xenoterran unleashes its devastating strikes. A massive shockwave tears through the area, sending red Kool-Aid flying in all directions. The blonde fighter barely manages to react as the monstrous threat presses the offensive. Energy crackles in the air as the blonde combatant summons a glowing construct from thin air. With an effortless flick of his wrist, he prepares to engage the creature on entirely different terms. The sheer weight of his presence commands the room. The Xenoterran watches from the shadows, its terrifying red gaze locked onto the intruder. It senses something entirely unprecedented in this human, recognizing a power that defies normal limits. The tension in the chamber reaches a boiling point. A devastating counterattack slices deep into the creature's flesh, opening a grievous wound across its chest. But instead of falling, the beast stands its ground with terrifying composure. It speaks of a peculiar power, completely unfazed by the strike. What happens next defies every known law of biology and combat. Right before the blonde fighter's eyes, the torn muscle tissue begins to twitch and crawl back together. The wound knits itself shut at an unnatural, frightening speed. Disgust washes over the blonde warrior's face as he processes the horrifying regeneration. He clutches his hat, shedding his disguise as his expression hardens into pure fury. This creature possesses an ability far beyond any Xenoterran he has ever faced. The engagement explodes back into motion with blinding velocity. They trade bone-shattering blows that shake the very foundation of the hall. Every strike echoes with immense destructive force, turning the battlefield into a blur of motion. A massive blade materializes from pure energy, descending upon the Xenoterran with apocalyptic weight. The creature scrambles desperately to evade the falling executioner's blow. The shockwave from the missed strike obliterates the stone floor. The beast retaliates with a vicious flurry, pushing the blonde warrior back across the ruined pavement. Sparks fly as claws rake against hardened defenses. Neither combatant is willing to give an inch in this brutal war of attrition. With a tremendous burst of momentum, the blonde fighter unleashes an overwhelming torrent of kinetic energy. The sheer pressure creates a towering column of white-hot force that engulfs the area. The Xenoterran is slammed into the ground with catastrophic impact. Dust settles over the crater as the battered monster struggles to lift its heavy head. The damage is severe, yet those unnatural healing factors immediately kick into overdrive. It refuses to stay down, staring up with a menacing glare. Suddenly, an unexpected interruption alters the entire dynamic of the confrontation. Another figure steps into the snowy expanse, watching the chaos with cold amusement. The newcomer questions the blonde fighter's involvement in a mocking tone. Kirillo steps forward, a hulking presence who wastes no time asserting his authority over the battlefield. He identifies himself to the wandering artist, casually discussing the incredible strength of the superhuman. The tension shifts from immediate combat to a dangerous standoff. Back in the combat zone, the battle resumes with terrifying intensity as the Xenoterran launches another furious assault. The blonde warrior easily tracks the movement, noting that the creature's severed arm has still not fully regenerated. Every weakness is being carefully calculated. The creature pushes off the ground with a monstrous leap, aiming a crushing kick straight at its opponent's head. The blonde fighter meets the attack head on, executing a lightning-fast counter that sends shockwaves rippling through the hall. Kirillo watches the display of overwhelming might, praising how cleanly his allies sliced the beast in half earlier. But as the blonde warrior raises his hand to manifest another devastating weapon of pure will, a dark realization takes hold. The power comes at a terrible price. With a flick of a finger, projectile weapons materialize out of pure thought, but the strain on the body is already becoming unbearable. Vision begins to fade at the edges. The ability allows for impossible speeds and strikes, but every second spent in the fight steals a little bit more of the sight away. The arena is silent except for the hum of lethal kinetic energy. A heavy projectile launches across the room, fast enough to carve through solid stone without slowing down. The Xenoterran responds with brutal, crushing force. Spikes shred the air and slam into the pillars, turning ancient stone into dust with a thunderous impact. It is built like a freight train of raw muscle and armor. Every collision sends shockwaves through the chamber, threatening to bring the entire structure down on top of them. The eyes blur further, turning the world into a smeared watercolor of gray and red. There is no time to rest and no room for error against an opponent that never gets tired. A sudden rush of wind signals a counterstrike. Blades flash in the dim light, catching flesh and opening deep red lines across the armor in a desperate exchange of blows. The heavy creature stumbles backward, gasping for breath as the injuries mount. For a fleeting second, it looks less like an unstoppable disaster and more like a cornered animal. A massive blow lands with bone-shaking force. The beast is knocked clean off its feet, crashing heavily onto the cold stone floor as the energy ripples fade away. Drawing a makeshift bow from the air, the fighter prepares the final shot. Every muscle in the upper body strains against the tension of the ethereal weapon. The arrow flies true, piercing the armor with a deafening crack, but the Xenoterran refuses to stay down, lunging forward with a terrifying roar despite the heavy damage. Vision is almost entirely gone now, replaced by dark static and blinding pain. Running purely on instinct, the fighter pushes past the physical limits of the human body. Clutching the wound and staring in sheer disbelief, the creature realizes it cannot win through brute force alone. The power arrayed against it is simply too vast. Heavy footsteps echo across the aftermath as Kirillo steps into view. The true mastermind behind the carnage looks down at the defeated monster with cold amusement. The battle against the Xenoterran takes a brutal turn as Kirillo faces the creature directly. The monster notes that this opponent is entirely different from the ones it faced before. Kirillo unleashes an overwhelming surge of pressure, cracking the ground beneath them. The Xenoterran gasps in shock as its severed arm begins to slowly regenerate. The creature struggles to buy time, desperately trying to put up a decent defense while its body heals. But Kirillo applies relentless force, closing the distance in the blink of an eye. With terrifying speed, Kirillo strikes, sending shockwaves through the chamber. The Xenoterran realizes too late the true scale of the power standing before it. An explosive impact rocks the area, throwing dust and debris everywhere. Kirillo stands victorious over the defeated beast, catching a breath after the heavy clash. Laughter breaks out as Kirillo reflects on the fight. The conversation shifts to the unusual mechanics of their abilities and the drastic physical changes tied to combat endurance. They discuss the strange balance of weight and power. Losing mass apparently unlocks staggering amounts of hidden strength, acting as a catalyst during overwhelming encounters. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifts back to the captive Xenoterran. Kirillo steps forward with a blade, preparing to finish what was started. A devastating thrust pierces the ground, kicking up a massive cloud of dust. The Xenoterran is driven hard against the stone, gasping for air as its body fails. Refusing to accept a quiet end, the Xenoterran desperately sprouts makeshift wings and launches itself into the air, attempting a frantic escape. The bid for freedom is brutally cut short. Carrillo closes the gap instantly, slamming the fleeing creature back down to Earth with overwhelming force. The destructive battle at the cathedral is raging at full force. The sheer impact sends shockwaves tearing through the heavy stone walls. A brutal clash unfolds as massive power collides directly with the surroundings. The fighters trade staggering blows that shatter the ancient architecture. Dust and debris fill the air as the heavy impacts continue to rattle the entire structure. Witnesses watch in utter disbelief from a distance. The entire cathedral begins to buckle under the relentless shockwaves. Cracks shoot across the grand pillars as the building struggles to stay upright. Observers inside scramble for cover as falling stone threatens to bury them. The chaos reaches a fever pitch as the combatants refuse to relent. Amidst the wreckage, the formidable combatants exchange punishing strikes. Every movement sends tremors rippling through the snowy grounds outside. The heavy violence leaves visible marks on everyone involved. Questions are raised about the extent of the damage and the identity of the mysterious foes. Deep within the shadows, other figures monitor the unfolding disaster. They discuss the formidable presence of Kang Lim and the trouble he brings. The shadowy overseers scheme in the dark, plotting their next moves. They recognize the sheer threat posed by the masked hero. Far from the chaos, Kang Lim returns home to a quiet apartment. He sheds the heavy gear, trying to catch his breath after the grueling ordeal. A simple note and a quiet meal offer a brief respite from his double life. Yet the contrast between the battlefield and normal student life remains staggering. Back at Seoyeon High School, classmates chatter about the recent dramatic events. Rumors and awe surround the mysterious heroes who protect the city. The students debate the strange behaviors of the Xenoterrans and the mysterious figures who fight them. Nobody suspects that the tired teenager sitting among them is the very hero they discuss. The psychological toll of endless battles weighs heavily on Kang Lim's mind. Flashes of traumatic moments threaten to overwhelm him in the middle of a normal school day. Kang Lim sits quietly in his room, turning over a mysterious business card in his hand. It points him toward a remote destination called Mount Yongpo, leaving him with heavy questions about his powers. At school, Kang Lim tries to keep a low profile, while his friends chat about snacks and ordinary life. But beneath the surface, he is carrying the weight of a secret double life that nobody around him suspects. Back at home, Kang Lim and his friends snack while watching a broadcast on television. The news is entirely consumed by the rising tide of Xenoterran disasters altering the world. Conversations turn to the shadowy figures standing against the monsters. The public talks about superhumans in whispers, wondering who they really are and where they come from. On television, a superhuman analyst named Hyung Jung Kim breaks down the global situation. He explains that without these mysterious protectors, the world would have fallen long ago. The broadcast highlights the known protectors safeguarding humanity, including Saint Pearl and others who have stepped into the light. Yet the analyst notes that many more remain hidden in the shadows. Maps light up with Xenoterran hotspots across the globe, illustrating a relentless planetary crisis. Governments struggle to contain disasters that defy conventional military strategy. The discussion pivots to South Korea's own mysterious guardians. Analysts point to the masked figure with the white cap who famously intervened during the Incheon port crisis. Footage and witness reports show the cloaked figures in action, revealing a complex web of allies and potential adversaries. The public is desperate for answers about these vigilantes. Suddenly, the news anchor drops a massive revelation live on air. Another superhuman has voluntarily stepped forward, establishing direct contact with government authorities. Kang Lim nearly chokes on his food as the broadcast reveals the new figure's identity. A Scottish woman named Jane Sonata has publicly claimed responsibility for protecting the British Isles. Back in his room, Kang Lim's friend reacts with pure shock to the global broadcast. Meanwhile, the analysts continue narrowing down the profile of South Korea's white cap hero. Analyst Hyung-jung Kim drops a chillingly close estimate regarding the white cap hero's identity, causing Kang Lim to sweat in sheer panic. They are getting dangerously close to the truth. Jury calls over the comms, telling Kang Lim that he does not have to come along, but Kang Lim has already made up his mind, determined to track down the mysterious old-timer. With quiet resolve, Kang Lim and his companion head out toward Mount Yongpo. A new journey begins, and the secrets of the superhuman world are about to unravel. The journey out of the city starts with a lot of complaining. Jury and Kang Lim navigate the long transit route toward Mount Yongpo. Every transfer feels endless when you are carrying your own gear. Kang Lim struggles to keep up the pace while Jury pushes forward without missing a beat. Subways and buses become the backdrop for quiet exhaustion. The distance to their destination stretches out across miles of winding country roads. Locals along the way offer directions and a glimpse of normalcy. Mount Yongpo finally comes into view as the local bus drops them near the base. Meanwhile, intelligence operations continue across the globe. Pearl receives an urgent phone call that interrupts her quiet morning. Classified surveillance footage reveals secrets buried in digital archives. Investigators comb through data to track the movements of powerful entities. Back on the trail, personal memories resurface during the steep climb. Writing in a journal offers a connection to someone who is no longer around. The hike up Seopmu Dojang proves to be an exhausting test of endurance. Every step feels heavier than the last as they push toward the summit. At the command center, analysts pore over new digital evidence. A breakthrough discovery changes everything they thought they knew about the situation. In the control room, the investigation into the mysterious incident at the banquet hall gets intense. Jury and the team comb through the security camera angles to find out how the body vanished without a trace. The footage shows something impossible happening right on screen. At the timestamp of 1 minute and 17 seconds, the target simply dissolves and disappears from the room. Slowing down the playback frame by frame reveals the unbelievable truth. It was not a glitch in the recording equipment, but a real anomaly caught on tape. Zooming in on the suspect reveals a hooded figure wearing a bucket hat and a long coat. This is the individual who made off with the missing body, hiding in plain sight. Far away from the digital screens, Kang Lim and his friends arrive at a peaceful traditional training ground. They are looking for a trophy, but the atmosphere feels unusually quiet. The Grand Master of the estate welcomes them back with a heavy staff in hand. He immediately knows why they have come to his doorstep, though he is not entirely pleased with their manners. As the old master walks away to take a stroll, Kang Lim quietly follows behind him. He has questions that need answering, and he is not about to let the master slip away. The elderly martial artist stops and turns around, calling out the white-capped superhuman standing before him. He knows exactly who the teenager is, even without the mask. Without warning, the master picks up a massive boulder and tosses it over the cliff edge. He tests Kang Lim's reflexes with terrifying casualness, daring the young hero to catch it. A sudden, blinding burst of force explodes right in front of them as the master delivers a devastating physical blow. Kang Lim's eyes widen in sheer disbelief at the overwhelming power. Kang Lim crashes into the rocky landscape with staggering force, every jump shaking the earth beneath him as he tries to master his overwhelming strength. The impact shatters stone into dust, yet he immediately pushes himself back up to keep moving forward without hesitation. With a massive leap, he slams his fists directly into the ground, sending shockwaves through the cliffside that tear the rock face apart. The raw output of energy is terrifying, demonstrating just how much raw power is locked inside his teenage frame. Exhausted and overwhelmed by the strain of the training, Kang Lim collapses against the rough stone wall, gasping for breath. The gap between his ambitions and his actual control over his abilities becomes painfully clear as his hands tremble. An elderly martial artist approaches him with a piercing, judgmental stare, calling out his hesitation and internal conflict. Every word cuts deep, pointing out that Kang Lim fights with a heavy conscience rather than the absolute focus required to survive. The elder lectures him on responsibility, claiming that true strength requires absolute resolve instead of misplaced pity. Kang Lim listens in bitter silence, knowing the old man cannot possibly understand the weight of the lives resting on his shoulders. Turning his back, the master delivers a harsh dismissal, warning the young hero that his current mindset will only lead to an early grave. He walks away, leaving Kang Lim to stew in his frustration and lingering self-doubt. Suddenly, panic sets in as Kang Lim notices Juri lying entirely motionless on the ground nearby, not even breathing. He rushes over in absolute terror, fearing that the exhaustion of their ordeal has taken a fatal toll on his handler. Working desperately, they manage to revive Juri, who gasps for air while Kang Lim collapses in pure relief. The scare serves as a stark reminder of how fragile their operation truly is in this unforgiving world. Settling into their new surroundings at the dojo, a burly associate hands over freshly sized uniforms for both of them. Even amid the heavy atmosphere, the stark difference in sizing brings a brief moment of levity to the tired duo. Juri chats away to release the nervous tension, while Kang Lim remains quiet, still processing the harsh lessons of the day. The dojo provides a temporary sanctuary, but the underlying danger of their mission never truly goes away. Looking out over the sprawling training grounds, they learn about the other disciples who have found refuge under the master's roof. Many of them carry deep scars and have lost everything to the relentless disasters plaguing the country. The strict training regimen is laid out clearly, promising brutal days ahead designed to push their physical limits to the absolute breaking point. There are no shortcuts here, only grueling discipline meant to forge survivors. Far away in a quiet cafe, a figure in a blue cap walks in, unaware of the shadows closing in around them. Someone familiar is waiting inside, turning a routine meeting into an unexpected encounter. Jane Sonata turns around to face her visitor, her gaze locking onto a mysterious face from the past. As old connections resurface, the board is set for a dangerous new confrontation. Deep in conversation, Pearl and Jane Sonata catch up over coffee, trading updates about old acquaintances and recent travels. But the casual chat takes a sharp turn when Pearl brings up a mutual friend named Zoe. Memories drift back to an incident in Scotland involving the Opera House, where their paths crossed during chaos. Pearl explains that Zoe was supposed to meet them at the cliffs, enjoying a shopping trip right before everything unfolded. The conversation deepens as Pearl reveals that Zoe is actually a superhuman, someone she had planned to introduce into the public light. But right now, reaching Zoe on the phone has proven impossible. Flashbacks pull back the curtain on a terrifying night when Zoe witnessed something she never should have seen. A figure took down a victim with brutal, one-handed force, using superhuman power in a quiet alleyway. Realizing a superhuman is committing crimes, Zoe instantly leaps into action to confront the assailant. Blows are traded in rapid succession, shaking the dark streets with sudden explosive impact. Despite her fierce counterattack, the mysterious assailant proves exceptionally durable and dangerous. Refusing to stay down, the attacker suddenly bolts from the scene, carrying the fallen victim's body away into the shadows. Back at the cafe, the realization hits hard. A rogue superhuman is targeting normal humans. Pearl and her companion evaluate the growing danger, noting that tracking down the perpetrator means chasing ghosts. Worse still, Zoe has vanished completely, leaving her comms dead for 5 whole days after pursuing the killer. The search party realizes they are up against multiple hostiles moving in the shadows. High up on Mount Yonspo, a quiet confrontation begins far away from the city chaos. An old master demands answers, warning that any hidden truths will be met with immediate force. Kang Lim stands his ground against the veteran fighter, but the elder is not convinced by mere words. He needs to test the boy's strength with his own eyes before any conversation continues. Without warning, the older warrior launches a blindingly fast strike. The ground shatters beneath the sheer pressure of the unexpected assault, testing Kang Lim's reflexes to their absolute limit. Kang Lim absorbs the heavy blows, trading speed and power in a fierce exchange. Every impact sends shockwaves through the mountain air as master and student clash. The Elder presses the offensive, driving Kang Lim back across the rugged terrain. Yet despite the relentless storm of punches, the young fighter refuses to stay down. Dust clears as the sparring pauses for a brief moment. The Elder watches closely, realizing that Kang Lim has taken punishing blows yet bears barely a single scratch. An astonishing question hangs in the air between them. The veteran asks if Kang Lim has ever even bled in a real fight, highlighting the boy's abnormal resilience. Kang Lim admits he is not entirely sure about the limits of his own body. The Elder begins to piece together a startling puzzle regarding the boy's true capabilities. The older fighter analyzes the core of superhuman power, explaining the concept of the scent. It is the hidden energy source that grants extraordinary abilities and near infinite stamina. While ordinary superhumans tap into this mystical scent to shatter defenses and shrug off damage, something is fundamentally different about Kang Lim's internal energy. The veteran reaches out to sense Kang Lim's power directly, only to find a baffling void. With him, the scent is completely dormant, utterly unawakened. The realization hits like a physical blow. Kang Lim has survived every brutal battle against the Xenos and endured massive strikes relying purely on raw physical toughness without even tapping into his scent. The Elder delivers the ultimate verdict with wide-eyed disbelief. Kang Lim possesses preposterous, unawakened strength that hints at a terrifying potential yet to be unlocked. The conversation deepens as Master Munru breaks down Kang Lim's incredible combat. He points out that the young fighter barely taps into his actual scent capacity. Munru explains that superhumans stand above normal human limitations through their bodily scent, yet Kang Lim operates on a totally different tier entirely. Kang Lim listens in stunned silence as the old master reveals just how rare his natural awakening truly is. Nobody reaches this scale without formal training. Memories of the brutal encounter with the octopus Xenotyran surface. Kang Lim remembers losing consciousness right in the middle of the chaos. Footage plays back the unbelievable reality of what happened while Kang Lim blacked out. His body kept fighting on pure instinct, turning the giant beast into a pulp. Munru analyzes that fleeting moment of awakening. It was a faint glimpse of true power triggered by a massive defensive reflex. The sheer magnitude of Kang Lim's latent abilities nearly overwhelmed his own mind. His body simply could not handle that level of dormant power yet. Munru recognizes that Kang Lim stands as a superhuman among superhumans, yet that immense power brings a heavy target on his back. The Xenoterrans clearly recognize the growing threat. Munru warns that humanity is locked in an unprecedented battle for survival. Offering guidance, the old master promises to help unlock Kang Lim's true potential, but first, breakfast calls to break the heavy tension. Back at the dojang, the grueling recovery process continues. Acupuncture needles make Kang Lim feel like a hedgehog while dealing with physical rehab. Kang Lim sneaks away from the group sessions to slip back toward normal life. The other members assume he is just handling brutal training drills. Meanwhile, his friends are left guessing about his sudden disappearances. Balancing school life with secret heroic duties is becoming a massive problem. Kang Lim gets ready for another ordinary school day, chatting with friends about dodging training. Little do they know, being a superhuman teenager means juggling algebra and world-ending threats. The group banters back and forth about excuses and commutes, keeping up a normal front. But behind the casual talk, preparations are quietly sliding into place. Jury coordinates the logistics from afar, instructing Kang Lim on gear checks and console setups. Every detail matters when operating under the radar. With a quick tie adjustment and a casual farewell, Kang Lim slips out the door. He steps away from student life and straight into the wider, hidden conflict. Elsewhere, the scale of the world is emphasized by quiet landscapes and hidden research facilities. Ben and his team operate from the shadows, tracking anomalies that ordinary eyes miss. Security feeds and airport checkpoints become the new battlefield for intelligence. Analysts scan every monitor, filtering faces to track down a mysterious operative. James and his team review surveillance logs, piecing together fragments of memory and missing footage. The search for answers grows increasingly tense as stakes rise. A phone call connects operatives across continents, bringing news from Northern Ireland. Zoe is out there investigating alone, and communication is breaking down. Pearl receives alarming reports of rising disappearances tied to superhumans in the region. The trail points directly towards Zoe, who has gone dark. The investigation turns grim as Pearl analyzes the damaged surroundings and missing personnel. Jane is brought into the loop, and the realization sets in that this is no ordinary rogue assignment. They map out the unknowns, realizing they are facing an adversary whose strength and numbers remain entirely uncalculated. Every move forward carries immense risk. A sudden Xenoterran alert sounds across the comms, forcing an immediate shift in priorities. Time frames stretch from days to months as the scale of the crisis sinks in. Pearl speaks with grave caution, emphasizing that capturing a superhuman in this climate is unprecedented and deeply perilous. Trust between operatives becomes the only safety net left. Out on the stone streets of Northern Ireland, operatives walk through ancient ruins where violence has just left its mark. The atmosphere is thick with dread and unfinished business. Among the fallen, a hooded figure surveys the carnage with chilling nonchalance, dismissing the bodies as mere stepping stones. A sinister new player steps into the light, ready for their next job. 3 days prior, in Northern Ireland, a bloody scene unfolds in the ruins as someone makes a chilling discovery. A cloaked figure looks down at the carnage, noting that a rather annoying development has just taken place. Meanwhile, at David's pub, Detective Matthew McCurry sits at the bar nursing a drink. He complains to the owner about the crushing pressure from his superiors over a brutal wave of cases. Matthew opens up about the bizarre nature of the recent disappearances. 13 people have vanished without a trace, leaving investigators completely baffled by the lack of evidence. The conversation shifts to a strange new bartender who has just arrived at the pub. Introducing himself as Faber, he pours a drink while blending into the noisy tavern crowd. As the night winds down, Matthew prepares to leave the pub. He bids farewell to the patrons and heads out into the chilly night air, completely unaware of what is waiting for him. The very next morning, the pub opens its doors to a different kind of chaos. A woman flirts openly with the patrons, injecting some lighthearted banter into the routine day. Detective McCurry bursts back into the establishment, determined to question everyone inside. He demands alibis and orders the patrons to cooperate immediately with his investigation. But that investigation hits a horrifying wall when dreadful news arrives. The man who was drinking at the bar the previous night is discovered torn to absolute shreds. Tension fills the local tavern as patrons gather to discuss a grim discovery. Word spreads of a man found in the woods, stripped of limbs and torn apart. Investigators examine the remains, realizing the victim is Douglas. A luxury watch on the wrist confirms his identity, but the brutal nature of the crime shocks everyone. A firearm is drawn inside the tavern as suspicion mounts. Tensions boil over when questions are raised about where everyone was during the previous night. Patrons offer alibis, claiming they stayed close or slept through the hours in question. The atmosphere grows heavy as the questioning turns personal. Faber becomes a point of interest, having recently arrived in the neighborhood. The timing of his arrival lines up suspiciously with the start of the violent incidents. Faber agrees to cooperate fully with the investigation, diffusing immediate conflict. The police officer makes a note to check in later as plans are made to leave. People begin clearing out into the night as the tavern winds down. Casual farewells mask the lingering paranoia hanging over the room. A sudden explosion shatters the calm outside. The transport vehicle carrying Faber has been completely blown apart. Panic erupts inside as word reaches the remaining tavern guests. Officers are gone and Faber has vanished into thin air. Accusations fly back inside as guns are pointed once again. The officer realizes he is completely surrounded by betrayal. A desperate plea is met with cold indifference. The trap springs shut as violence erupts inside the enclosed space. Shunned and cornered, the officer is overwhelmed in a brutal ambush. Red Kool-Aid splashes across the floor as the tavern turns into a slaughterhouse. Footsteps echo heavily as a mysterious figure steps into the tavern. A white hat and dark coat conceal an imposing presence arriving at the scene. Surviving members realize their plans worked out just as intended, but a newcomer steps forward, revealing his own lethal agenda. Ivan Jamal looks down at the carnage with a chilling grin. He prepares to share a fresh tale of violence before finishing everyone left standing. The aftermath of carnage leaves Ivan Jamal standing among the fallen, talking down to a bruised and battered David. Ivan reflects on the fleeting nature of life, casually mentioning how he prefers his encounters fresh and terrifying. David tries to crawl away, his immense frame trembling as he realizes the sheer gulf in power between them. Ivan casually dismisses the escape attempt, noting that eliminating David was never his main objective anyway. Heavy footsteps echo through the alley as two towering brutes try to intercept Ivan and protect their boss. It takes only a brief moment before they are swiftly taken down, slumping to the ground without landing a single blow. Ivan complains about the poor hospitality and the rudeness of those who crossed him, standing amidst the chaos he orchestrated. He questions why anyone would choose to help targets like David, treating the violence like a casual stroll through the park. Looking back at the ruined tavern and the fallen associates, Ivan remarks on the lack of decent company in this line of work. He grabs a head by the hair, deciding it is finally time to finish up this little piece of work. Suddenly, a masked figure drops in from above, confronting Ivan right in the middle of his gruesome task. The arrival of the superhuman shifts the tension instantly, cutting short Ivan's monologue as cold calculation replaces casual arrogance. The superhuman stands over the scene of devastation, taking in the horrific scale of Ivan's handiwork. Ivan turns around, unfazed and deeply curious about the mysterious vigilante who has finally appeared before him. Ivan reminisces about past encounters, noting how unusual it is to run into someone so utterly unfazed by impending doom. He recalls the faces of previous victims and wonders if this new opponent shares that same cold detachment. Testing the waters, Ivan offers a stark choice: answer his questions or beg with both hands for the chance to stay in one piece. The heavy atmosphere crackles with static as the superhuman weighs his options against the grinning predator. Driven by sheer desperation, David grovels on the floor, weeping and pleading for his life with trembling hands. Ivan looks down at the pathetic display with pure amusement, entertained by how quickly a tough criminal falls apart. In a sudden flash of movement, Ivan strikes down the petitioner, proving that promises mean nothing in his world. He explains that his actions are driven by a twisted philosophy of creation and destruction, defying the rigid constraints of fate. David gasps in utter disbelief as the final blow lands, questioning why Ivan would turn on him like this. Ivan calmly explains that human nature, curiosity, and the pursuit of petty revenge dictate every move he makes. A glowing, ethereal blue sphere manifests in the air, surrounded by floating spectral souls that represent Ivan's victims. He compares himself to a divine force of creation, brushing off any moral labels people try to pin on him. Ivan offers David one final, bitter choice before everything goes dark. Defiant to the end, David curses Ivan's name, telling him to burn as his strength completely fades away. With the business in the alley concluded, Ivan steps away from the carnage and heads toward the exit. His phone buzzes with a notification, cutting through the heavy silence of the ruined street. Checking his device, Ivan reads a message from Carol regarding an urgent new development. Somewhere nearby, a high-profile target has broken containment, giving Ivan a brand new job to hunt down. Things are heating up far away from home, as figures in hooded cloaks discuss missing guests and runaway children. A quick-tempered companion hurries through the streets, complaining about every little delay while keeping the mission on track. Meanwhile, the situation in Northern Ireland is going from bad to worse, with disappearances piling up around Derry. The local authorities are struggling to keep up as Xenoterran sightings escalate and tension fills the air. A sudden alert flashes across the screens, pointing straight toward Campys, where civilian casualties have been reported. Jane and the team realize they have no choice but to move quickly before government crackdowns catch up to them. Emergency broadcasts echo through the town as 22 lives vanish in a span of months, plunging the region into panic. Elite anti-terrorism task forces mobilize instantly, leaping across rooftops to intercept the growing threat. Jane rushes down an alleyway, stepping into a tense confrontation where something massive and terrifying waits. A fierce red haired fighter stands amid the rubble, battered and breathless from an overwhelming clash. Memories of lost comrades weigh heavily on the survivors, bringing tears to eyes that usually hide behind a tough exterior. Regrets linger on the bench as companions share quiet, heartbreaking apologies for the way things turned out. Suddenly, danger strikes back without warning as the red haired fighter launches into action, colliding with Jane in a brutal counterattack. The chaotic aftermath of the clash leaves dust hanging thick in the air, but the danger is far from over. A towering figure crashes down into the scene with terrifying velocity, shaking the ground beneath everyone's feet. Through the swirling debris, another powerful presence emerges, sizing up the chaotic landscape. The tension spikes immediately as unfamiliar combatants cross paths in the ruined streets. Pearl steps forward to confront the newcomer, demanding answers about the sudden escalation. The atmosphere crackles with hostility as neither side is willing to back down an inch. The confrontation intensifies as more heavy hitters arrive on the scene. Conversations turn sharp and dangerous, revealing underlying plots that stretch far beyond this single battlefield. Accusations fly fast and furious between the powerful factions gathered at the bridge. Everyone has their own agenda, and trust is a luxury none of them can afford. A mysterious figure sits perched above the chaos, watching the verbal sparring with detached amusement. Carol drops subtle hints about grander designs, leaving the others on edge. Pearls presses the mysterious visitor for the truth behind the recent catastrophes. Every word exchanged uncovers another layer of a much larger, terrifying puzzle. The conversation shifts to the immense risks involved if certain players decide to go all out. The sheer destructive potential mentioned makes even the strongest combatants pause. Suddenly, a swift leap shatters the fragile peace, sending shockwaves through the area. The battle lines are instantly redrawn as raw power takes over once again. With a thunderous crash, the confrontation reaches a boiling point as Titans lock eyes across the ruined terrain. There is nowhere left to run, and the final clash is about to erupt. The battle lines draw taut across the ruined street as heavy hitters square off. Tensions boil over into open confrontation, leaving no room for negotiation. A sudden rush of movement shatters the silence. Combatants close the distance instantly, trading lightning-fast strikes that test their limits. Raw, destructive force tears through the surroundings with terrifying velocity. Every collision sends shockwaves rippling across the pavement. Observers watch in disbelief as a golden aura erupts into a blinding spectacle. The sheer magnitude of power on display redefines what is possible. The strain begins to show as both sides absorb a brutal punishment. Breath comes ragged and the toll of the onslaught weighs heavily. A monstrous new element enters the fray as a tail lashes out with lethal precision. The true nature of the threat stands revealed in terrifying clarity. Blows rain down in a blur of motion, shaking the earth beneath their feet. Neither combatant is willing to cede an inch of ground. Dust clears to reveal the aftermath of a devastating exchange. Resolve hardens on both sides, setting the stage for the final clash. The dust clears just enough to show the brutal aftermath of a clash that is shaking the very earth beneath them. Stones fracture midair under tremendous pressure, leaving no room to breathe as the battle escalates. Floating debris turns into deadly projectiles as psychological warfare takes over the arena. Taunts fly back and forth, pushing the combatants to the absolute edge of their endurance. Tempers flare as ancient rivalries and fresh grievances collide in the dust. Every word is loaded with malice, and the tension threatens to tear the entire landscape apart. Eyes narrow as strategic calculations are made in real time. Panic is a luxury no one can afford right now, especially when every heartbeat could be the last. The weight of responsibility presses down heavily on tired shoulders. There is no running away from what must be done, and the sheer scale of the threat becomes terrifyingly clear. Frustration boils over as the sheer stubbornness of the opposition refuses to break. The atmosphere grows heavy with unsaid threats and simmering rage. High above the chaos, automated drones broadcast the terrifying spectacle to a watching world. The northern Irish city of Campsie has become a massive theater of war. Back home, observers watch the live feeds with bated breath as analysts try to decipher the incomprehensible data streaming in from the combat zone. Global research facilities lock onto the coordinates where Britain's renowned superhuman and Jane Sonata are locked in an unprecedented standoff. Observers struggle to comprehend what they are witnessing on the monitors. A bucket hat in the middle of a global crisis raises more questions than answers. Down on the ground, the rules of physics completely break down as monolithic stones defy gravity. These are not ordinary boulders, they carry an otherworldly, terrifying intelligence. Every dodge requires split-second timing as the airborne monoliths close in from all directions. The pressure feels less like a physical attack and more like an oncoming mountain. The floating rocks possess a frightening autonomy, changing trajectories mid-flight to hunt down their target relentlessly without stopping. There is no visible trigger or controller guiding the onslaught, suggesting an innate, unbound consciousness driving the stones forward. Attacking the source directly proves nearly impossible when the power on display is this overwhelming and erratic. Explosions shatter the concrete as the relentless bombardment continues, pushing defense mechanisms to their absolute breaking point. Just when it seems like escape is impossible, a sudden shift in the air halts everything in its tracks. A devastating counterattack is locked and loaded. The superhuman launches straight into a counterattack, sending his opponent flying with a brutal strike across the street. Even when anticipated, the sheer velocity of the impact leaves the massive creature reeling. The ground shatters beneath the recoil as stone pillars burst upward from the asphalt. It is a display of raw combat instinct that completely catches the powerful adversary off guard. Breathing hard, the enemy realizes just how outmatched its physical techniques truly are against this masked opponent. Every move the superhuman makes is calculated to dismantle their defenses piece by piece. A strange psychic resonance hangs in the air between them, revealing fragments of a deeper connection. The enemy recognizes the distinct presence of souls echoing within the young hero. Floating stones hum with an ancient energy in a surreal mental space, holding the consciousness of Hengist. These massive floating monuments share an intrinsic link with the fighters below. Zoe and her companion observe the cosmic display, realizing they are witnessing the last remaining Stonehenges in existence. Their shared consciousness allows them to swap positions and swap perceptions at will. Back in the physical world, the battle pauses as the combatants analyze each other's hidden depths. The massive adversary admits that fighting this kid feels entirely hopeless. Costa steps forward, noting the scars and modifications born from past encounters with Xenoterrans. The history of violence between humans and these creatures runs far deeper than anyone suspected. Dangerous toxins begin to ignite in the air, threatening to overwhelm anyone caught nearby. Yet Costa's healing abilities brush off the lethal venom with chilling indifference. Memories of Zoe and her extraordinary powers surface as the tension reaches a breaking point. The likelihood of someone possessing such immense strength raises unsettling questions. The superhuman stands resolute under the open sky, carrying the heavy burden of every single encounter. He refuses to let the tragedy of this endless conflict dictate his purpose. Suddenly, an ominous shift in the atmosphere signals that a new power is being activated. The altar begins to glow, drawing the attention of everyone on the battlefield. White tendrils slice through the air with terrifying speed, forcing the group to scatter in an instant. Something massive and entirely unexpected has just arrived on the scene. Reinforcements descend from above just in time, arriving with a casual quip that cuts through the lingering tension. But as the dust clears, the true scale of the incoming threat becomes painfully clear. The city of Campsie stands shattered, its streets littered with unearthly debris. High above the ruined pavement, strange floating rocks hang suspended in mid-air as a deeper tension gathers among the survivors. A powerful gathering of extraordinary beings converges in the ruins. Old faces and strange new threats size each other up, sharing tense words about the chaos unfolding across the region. Military commanders monitor the disaster zone through automated drones, tracking the impossible phenomena overhead. The British Special Task Force issues strict directives as the situation spirals further out of control. Memories of past clashes resurface as the fighters analyze the enemies before them. One particular blue-toned threat from an earlier encounter remains a haunting puzzle they are desperate to solve. Suddenly, panic cuts through the strategy. Someone realizes a crucial member of their group is missing, throwing the entire gathering into instant disarray. Carol has vanished without a trace, leaving behind only questions and rising dread. The remaining fighters realize they have walked right into a trap. Tempers flare as the heavy realization of the trap sets in. They debate their next move, knowing every second wasted brings them closer to disaster. Without warning, a massive, towering brute steps into the open, its crimson muscles coiling with terrifying strength. It wastes no time launching a devastating assault. The brute hurls heavy projectiles across the ruined street with casual, brutal force. The ground shatters into dust under the sheer impact of the onslaught. Gellin steps up to face the Crimson Powerhouse head-on, his red eyes locked on the approaching terror. This is no ordinary skirmish, it is a battle for survival. Mysterious floating stones begin to shift and hum with strange energy around the battlefield. The landscape itself seems to be transforming into an arena. The floating boulders reshape into razor-sharp stakes, hovering ominously above the combatants. A chilling pronouncement echoes through the air as the trap springs shut. Just as the situation looks completely hopeless, a familiar face arrives from above. Pearl descends into the chaos, bringing much-needed relief to the overwhelmed group. The sky cracks open as a massive figure drops from above, landing with a thunderous impact in the middle of the street. Jane catches a young child safely in her arms, realizing the absolute danger surrounding them. Billy arrives on the scene late, immediately getting chewed out for lagging behind while the stakes are this high. Jane holds the little girl tight, trying to make sense of the sudden chaos descending on the area. Kang Lim steps into view wearing his signature white hat and mask, sizing up the threat standing right in front of him. These are not ordinary creatures. They possess a chilling intelligence that sets them apart from anything seen before. Towering figures like Del Ophir loom over the confrontation, radiating terrifying raw power and unyielding hostility. The tension in the air reaches a breaking point as both sides weigh their next move carefully. To everyone's absolute shock, the Xenoterran begins to speak in clear sentences, proving they possess cognitive thought and speech. Threats fly back and forth, with the opposition warning that anyone trying to rescue Carol will pay dearly. Negotiations stall as harsh demands are laid on the table, with the powerful entities holding all the cards. Kang Lim listens intently, calculating every variable in a situation where one wrong step means total disaster. The opposing side issues an ultimatum, stressing that their patience is running thin and full-scale war is just around the corner. They warn that the aftermath of a direct clash here would be catastrophic for everyone involved. A dark secret comes to light regarding how souls are resurrected and bound by an unbreakable, mystical chain. Even brought back through dark power, these entities retain their own free will and memories of past lives. The conversation shifts to Dellen, a special case who somehow managed to break free from his controller's absolute command. With Dellen currently in a comatose state, the mechanics of this resurrection process become the key to everything. Jane makes a split-second tactical choice, tossing the child safely across the gap as part of the delicate exchange. The tension peaks as both parties ensure the terms of the handoff are strictly met without sudden tricks. The child is recovered safely, but questions immediately arise about her mysterious condition after the ordeal. Jane confirms the young girl simply passed out from exhaustion during all the frantic movement. Kang Lim stands his ground, issuing a stern warning that immense power must never be used to risk innocent lives. The terrifying adversary simply laughs off the lecture, brushing aside notions of mortal morality. The aftermath of the massive clash leaves the world reeling, with the British government deploying elite forces to secure the aftermath zone. Whispers and debates spread globally about the mysterious figure who fought in the chaos. News broadcasts analyze the mysterious warrior with red hair and dark skin who intervened in the battle. Witnesses come forward to praise the savior who turned the tide against the monstrous threat. Spokespersons hold press conferences to address the public anxiety, confirming that casualty counts remain surprisingly low despite the scale of destruction. Experts even point to inexplicable floating boulders left behind in the conflict zone. Elsewhere, key figures gather to discuss the implications of these extraordinary events. Introductions are made among specialists who sense that a larger paradigm shift is underway. A friendly gathering takes place as new allies break the ice and share introductions. The atmosphere is warm, though underlying tensions about the state of the world remain present beneath the surface. Conversations turn toward powerful individuals and the sheer aura they project. Participants discuss the whereabouts of Gellin, who is currently recovering in a specialized lab under close watch. A briefing begins as files are opened and the latest intelligence is laid out on the table. The team goes over the lowdown on Carol and Nellen, piecing together every detail witnessed during the encounters. Suddenly, an alert flashes as an unauthorized presence requests access to the facility. Security systems register someone moving at incredible speed, straight toward the meeting room. Before guards can react, a figure zips right past security and through the gates. The room reacts with stunned disbelief as the intruder marches straight toward them. Far away in a quiet, wooded area, a young fighter sits amidst the trees, trying to clear his head. He confides in an older companion about a strange, restless feeling he cannot quite shake. The veteran mentor listens closely, acknowledging the intense pressure and frustration building up inside the adolescent. He understands the burden of heightened senses and the constant urge to push further. Deep in the shadows of the forest, something massive and dormant stirs beneath the earth. A low groan echoes through the trees, signaling that another threat is waking up. Deep in the quiet wilderness, Kang Lim's heightened senses pick up an odd static in the air. Something heavy is lingering just out of sight, and his instincts are refusing to settle down. He spots a harmless little rabbit hopping through the underbrush, but the utter stillness of the surrounding forest tells him a much larger presence is hiding nearby. An elderly companion calls out for him to hurry up and head back before the food gets cold. Kang Lim tears his gaze away from the trees, trying to shake off the nagging feeling. Far away in a shadowy chamber, high-ranking entities discuss the mysterious white-capped human who keeps interfering with their plans. They realize their operations have been tracked. Tensions flare as the figures debate whether Kang Lim's discovery was pure coincidence or a calculated move. One thing is certain, the white cap has become a serious liability. They decide that monitoring him from afar is no longer enough. Orders are given to hunt down the white cap directly and eliminate the complication once and for all. Back at base, an unexpected intrusion catches the leadership completely off guard. Uninvited visitors stride right past security without so much as a warning. Banter flies fast and sharp as the newcomers make themselves comfortable, completely unbothered by the heavy tension in the room. The conversation shifts immediately to business, pulling up old records of massive global threats and brutal past incidents that left entire regions helpless. Piecing clues together from previous chaotic encounters, they connect a certain masked fighter to the bucket hat sighting, realizing the secret identity has practically been hiding in plain sight. Flashbacks reveal an accidental meeting in the Netherlands, where a documentary crew inadvertently crossed paths with the exact same mystery man. Matt Rose confirms the connection, realizing the boy they have been tracking all this time goes by the name of Juan, leaving Kang Lim's secret hanging by a razor-thin thread. Deep in a sterile laboratory, an uninvited visitor makes a dramatic entrance, throwing open Dr. Oldman's door without an appointment. It is Juhi, marching right past security protocols and straight into the old man's workspace to demand answers. Juhi wastes no time trading barbs with the grumpy doctor, questioning his eccentric methods and his peculiar projects. Oldman fires right back, unimpressed by her abrasive attitude and her sudden, unannounced visits. The conversation shifts to the heavy burden carried by humanity's protectors. Oldman explains the grim reality of researching Xenoterrans, creatures that shatter physical limits and crush anything standing in their path. Juhi probes deeper into the doctor's network, bringing up rumors about a missing subject and whispering about a certain someone who recently returned from Northern Ireland. The tension in the laboratory thickens instantly. Oldman reveals that Dellen is recovering, though his mind remains a blank slate with no memories of his past self. It is a haunting recovery, leaving the once powerful fighter wandering in a haze of total amnesia. Thousands of miles away, Zoe demonstrates her extraordinary abilities, using her chamber of complete concealment to vanish completely from sight. She reveals the strange mechanics of her power, which can cloak herself and anyone nearby. Zoe explains the terrifying precision required for her blood-drawn spatial barrier, noting how a transparent stain on the ground marks the boundary where invisibility takes hold. Step outside that boundary, and the illusion instantly shatters. The investigation turns to the mysterious hideouts of their enemies, uncovering the secret dimensions where portals open and close without warning. They realize that Ivan and his crew have been slipping through subspace realms right under their noses. Darker secrets come to light as the team discusses Ivan's terrifying ability to stitch fallen bodies together and bring them back to life. This forbidden power carries a heavy cost, driven by a ruthless and reckless ambition. Amidst the monsters and warlords stands Carol, a remarkably ordinary and fragile young girl whom Ivan fiercely protects. Her presence among such dangerous company suggests a much deeper, hidden plot. A chilling prophecy is voiced as the group analyzes Carol's clairvoyance, warning that a massive battle is looming in Korea that will claim many lives. The visions are blurry, but the impending disaster is frighteningly clear. Security footage confirms that Ivan has been manipulating future events all along, utilizing Carol's uncanny foresight to guide his every move. The puzzle pieces snap together, revealing an enemy who is always 10 steps ahead. Back in the present, a sudden phone call cuts through the tension. Pearl receives urgent news about Dylan waking up, setting the stage for a dramatic collision of forces as the ultimate showdown approaches. Far away from the chaos of the city, a quiet conversation unfolds over the phone. Someone is checking in on Dylan, a figure whose memory remains deeply fractured after everything that happened. Back at Seoyeon High School, everyday life rolls on with typical teenage bickering. Classrooms buzz with lighthearted arguments and normal high school friction. Students tease each other over snacks and basketball games, completely unaware of the heavy burdens carried by some of their peers. For a brief moment, it is just an ordinary school day. Then the classroom door rattles violently. Someone is calling out for Kang Lim, shattering the casual atmosphere in an instant. Rivals look for payback over past scores, but Kang Lim is nowhere to be found. His seat sits empty, leaving everyone wondering where the quiet student slipped off to. A classmate peeks into the hallway to answer a summons to the teacher's office. Word spreads quickly that someone important has come looking for Kang Lim. Inside the office, a solemn conversation takes place about Kang Lim's frequent absences and mysterious disappearances during class hours. His teachers are deeply concerned. Standing outside in the hallway, an unexpected visitor waits by the window. Gramps has arrived at the school, keeping a watchful eye on the young hero. Gramps steps outside with Kang Lim, checking in on how the boy is adjusting to ordinary student life. It is a rare moment of mentorship away from the battlefield. Miles away at Mount Yongpo, tranquility fills the training grounds of Seotmu Dojang. Students go about their routine chores, enjoying a peaceful afternoon. Master Lee pauses his sweeping as a strange tremor shakes the air. The wind picks up suddenly, carrying an unnatural vibration across the courtyard. Master Lee's eyes widen in sheer disbelief as he looks up toward the sky. Something massive and terrifying is descending upon them. Out of nowhere, an immense, silent pressure hits the ground. Master Lee stops in his tracks as the wind begins to howl. A massive, towering figure looms overhead, dropping into the area with terrifying force. The sheer scale of the arrival sends shockwaves through the surroundings. Panic instantly ripples through the gathered crowd. Screams erupt as the colossal threat makes its presence undeniably known. Explosions tear through the landscape, sending debris flying in every direction. The battlefield transforms into a zone of absolute chaos. Multiple formidable entities stand ready for conflict, each radiating an intimidating aura. Master Lee tries to process the sheer absurdity of the encounter. The inner resolve of a martial artist is tested to its absolute limit. Memories and lessons from the past echo in the quiet moments before the storm. Back at Seoyeon High School, classrooms erupt into motion as emergency alerts blare through the speakers. An urgent evacuation order is handed down to all students. Sirens wail across the streets as citizens scramble for safety. The Xeno-Terran Alert Control Center confirms a massive sighting near Mount Yongpo. Windstorms rip through the urban environment, tearing up asphalt and tossing debris through the air. The sheer velocity of the weather phenomenon creates widespread panic. Without warning, a devastating counterstrike lands with crushing force. One of the combatants is sent hurtling backward, unable to fend off the onslaught. Desperate orders ring out as fighters scatter to evade incoming destruction. The situation deteriorates rapidly into a frantic fight for survival. A terrifying grip closes in, leaving no room for error. Fear grips the onlookers as the adversary presses its relentless advantage. Just when all hope seems lost, a swift streak cuts across the sky. The superhuman arrives at high velocity, ready to turn the tide of the battle in an instant. The elderly martial artist rushes through the chaos, desperately trying to reach his disciples before disaster strikes. Panic floods the phone call as he listens in horror to the sounds of destruction unfolding on the other end. He arrives at the dojo to find devastating ruin, with his students already gone and the place torn apart. Elsewhere, the Xeno-Terran monsters gather and discuss their next move, plotting destruction across the city. Amidst the wreckage, a terribly injured disciple is discovered, having barely survived the onslaught. The fallen student shares a heartbreaking final moment with the master, whispering words of deep affection. Overcome with grief, the master reflects on his failure to protect his chosen family from the looming threat. Meanwhile, students at Seon High School look out the windows in sheer disbelief as strange entities approach. Panic erupts inside the school hallways as the Xenoterrans breach the perimeter with terrifying force. The monsters ruthlessly prepare the school as their next hunting ground, leaving terror in their wake. Students scramble frantically for any escape route, running for their lives as the building comes under attack. Just in the nick of time, a familiar white-capped hero drops down from above to meet the threat head-on. Panic sweeps through Seayon High School as Xenoterrans breach the perimeter and head straight for the windows. Students scramble in terror, but Kang Lim is already moving to meet the threat head-on. With explosive force, Kang Lim crashes into the courtyard, leaving a massive crater in the pavement. Dust clears to reveal the masked hero standing tall against the invading creatures. Kang Lim leaps into action with blinding speed, closing the distance instantly. A brutal strike sends the creature reeling backward from the sheer impact. The monster fights back with desperate ferocity, but Kang Lim counters every move. He vaults over the beast, pressing the offensive without giving it a single second to breathe. Inside the school hallways, absolute chaos unfolds as students flee for their lives. Xenoterrans swarm the corridors, turning the once safe school into a war zone. Fear grips everyone trapped inside as the creatures close in on the terrified students. There seems to be nowhere left to run. Just as the monsters corner their prey, Kang Lim streaks through the hallway like a white and red lightning bolt. He intercepts the threat before it can harm his classmates. A terrifying pulse ripples across the school grounds, signaling an even greater danger. The entire building shakes as the situation spirals completely out of control. In a moment of sheer horror, a Xenoterran seizes a student by the throat. Desperate cries echo through the corridor as help arrives a fraction too late. Kang Lim's eyes widen in disbelief as he witnesses the violence unfold right before him. The tragic reality of fighting these creatures hits home in the most painful way. Outside in the courtyard, a mysterious figure wearing a white cap watches the unfolding catastrophe. He moves with an eerie, effortless grace that commands the attention of the beasts. The newcomer casually obliterates a Xenoterran with a single devastating blow, showing terrifying power. The remaining monsters cower in absolute fear before him. The battle reaches a boiling point as the old man grips his opponent, refusing to let go. Illusions shatter in the heat of the clash, and the enemies trade heavy blows that shake the ground beneath them. Vengeance fuels the exchange as accusations fly between the combatants. The old fighter stands firm, vowing to make them pay dearly for what happened to his sons. A sudden strike sends shockwaves through the area, knocking the fighter back with incredible force. Dust clears to reveal the sheer brutality of the exchange, leaving everyone breathless. The onslaught continues relentlessly as punches connect with bone-rushing impact. Red Kool-Aid sprays across the scene, marking the heavy toll of this brutal confrontation. Amidst the chaos, Kang Lim suddenly stirs back to reality. Classmates crowd around him, stunned and confused by the sudden shift in events around them. Realization washes over his peers as they piece together what just happened. The quiet student they knew was actually the masked hero protecting them all along. Without wasting a second, Kang Lim slips away from the group. He knows there is no time to linger when danger still looms over the upper floors. Back on the battlefield, the veteran fighter sizes up his strange adversary. This foe is tougher than expected, adapting and evolving with every single second that passes. A detached limb lies abandoned on the ground, hinting at a bizarre biology. The enemy speaks casually, mocking the old man while wielding terrifying aura manipulation. Far away in the United States, global leaders gather in an emergency meeting. The sheer scale of the invasion demands an international response, and powerful figures prepare to move. Panic unfolds inside the school hallways as a Xenoterran corners a terrified civilian, threatening sudden disaster. Before the creature can strike, Kang Lim arrives in his white cap, neutralizing the threat with absolute precision. Surrounded by chaos, Kang Lim realizes the sheer scale of the invasion. Dozens of entities are closing in from every direction. Inside the gymnasium, students huddle together in sheer terror as monstrous shapes breach the perimeter. A hulking, multi-limbed fungoid emerges, towering over the gymnasium floor and cutting off all exits. With no time to hesitate, Kang Lim shatters the glass and launches himself directly into the fray. The massive beast lashes out with crushing force, but Kang Lim counters with devastating speed. A single concentrated punch sends shockwaves tearing through the gymnasium walls and out into the courtyard. As the dust clears, the monstrous threat is completely gone, leaving the students stunned and breathless. Whispers ripple through the survivors as they recognize the masked defender who saved their lives. Kang Lim presses forward without missing a beat, sweeping through remaining targets with unrelenting momentum. Standing amidst the aftermath, he surveys the quieted grounds before turning his attention toward a new destination. Far across the city at Incheon International Airport, powerful new players step onto Korean soil, setting the stage for what comes next. Inside Seon High School, panic gives way to absolute horror as a Xenoterran breaches the third floor. Students scatter in terror while Mr. Park finds himself trapped in the hallway with the nightmarish creature. Mr. Park orders his students to run for their lives, refusing to let them become victims. With terrifying strength, the creature grabs him by the throat, cutting off any chance of escape. In his final moments, Mr. Park thinks only of the children he spent his life protecting. He offers a quiet prayer of forgiveness to a cruel world, leaving behind a legacy of pure selflessness. Kundo refuses to leave his teacher behind to face the beast alone. Spurred by desperate courage, he leaps into action, grabbing gym equipment to fight back against the monster. Kundo tackles the Xenoterran with everything he has, screaming for his classmates to help him push the monster out the window. Every ounce of his strength goes into saving what is left of their classroom. With a massive coordinated heave, Kundo and his peers send the Xenoterran crashing through the glass. The beast plummets from the third floor, dragging Kundo down into the courtyard below. The fall leaves Kundo pinned beneath the creature in the dirt, struggling for his very breath. The Xenoterran's crushing grip tightens, threatening to end everything right there on the pavement. As darkness creeps in, Kundo's mind drifts back to his father. He remembers walking hand in hand down dusty streets, listening to lessons about kindness and always putting others first. His father taught him that caring too much would bring pain, but that a true hero cannot ignore someone in need. Those final promises echo in Kundo's heart as his strength begins to fade. Outside the school gates, Kang Lim walks away quietly in his civilian clothes, carrying the heavy burden of a hero who cannot save everyone. Bystanders whisper about him, unaware of the boy beneath the hood. Suddenly, the emergency broadcast cuts through the air with a chilling Xenoterran warning. Another disaster strikes, demanding immediate action from the city's hidden protectors. Kang Lim stops dead in his tracks as the realization hits him. The mask goes back on in an instant, transforming the quiet student back into the formidable superhuman. The battle inside Sion High School reaches its brutal climax as the masked soldier lands a devastating blow. The classroom hallway shakes from the sheer impact, leaving everyone stunned in the dust. Silence falls for a split second as the dust clears to reveal the aftermath of the clash. Students cower in fear while the true scale of the carnage sets in around them. Special forces flood the building, securing the perimeter and rushing through the ruined corridors. They quickly realize the grim reality of what happened here. Amidst the wreckage, injured students struggle to stand, their bodies battered from the ordeal. The toll of fighting these monstrous entities is agonizingly clear. Whispers ripple through the surviving classmates as they piece together who was really under that mask. The realization hits close to home when they recognize a familiar face. Without wasting a single second, the white cap hero slips away from the school grounds and heads straight into the city streets. There is no time to rest when danger looms larger elsewhere. A massive Xenoterran bursts into view, instantly turning the street into a war zone. Razor-sharp spikes shoot out from the ground, forcing the hero onto the defensive. The creature's attacks come fast and relentless, each strike carrying enough force to level city blocks. Dodging by a hair's breadth, the hero tries to find an opening. Even with peak reflexes, countering these armored horrors feels like fighting a wall of solid stone. The sensory overload and sheer nausea from the beast's presence make every move a gamble. High above the chaos, mysterious observers watch the spectacle unfold with chilling detachment. They recognize the immense power at play, noting that this adversary is on a completely different level. Back on the ground, the terrifying roar of the Xenoterran echoes across the district. The onlookers realize that whatever is happening here goes far beyond a simple monster sighting. As the dust settles over the chaotic battlefield, a lingering dread hangs in the air. The Watchers whisper about an approaching storm of fear and despair, unlike anything the city has ever faced. The battle lines blur as an overwhelming presence takes the field, sending shockwaves through everyone watching. The sheer scale of power on display threatens to unravel the entire conflict before it even begins. Violence erupts instantly as limbs clash with devastating force. Blood splatters across the ground, turning the chaotic arena into a brutal test of survival. The masked fighter steps into the fray, confronting the terrifying opponent face to face. Every move is calculated, yet the sheer terror of the enemy's ability begins to crack their composure. A devastating counterattack lands with crushing weight, sending shockwaves through the veteran fighters. The Grand Master takes a brutal hit, stumbling backward in sheer disbelief as the illusion shatters around him. Comrades rush to the fallen leader's side as panic threatens to overwhelm the group. The realization sets in that conventional strength might not be enough to overcome this nightmare. Moving with terrifying speed, the assailant strikes from the shadows, leaving a trail of destruction in a matter of seconds. The veterans find themselves utterly outmatched by a foe manipulating perception itself. The dust settles on a gruesome scene as bodies hit the pavement. Even the strongest minds are crumbling under the weight of this psychological assault. A spectator watches in awe and absolute terror from the sidelines, realizing the true caliber of the superhuman combatants. This is no ordinary skirmish. It is a battle reshaping the entire world order. Chaos deepens as unexpected forces collide in the arena. Confusion spreads through the ranks as allies and enemies blur together in a dizzying storm of sensory overload. The air begins to warp as a terrifying psychic wave tears through the battlefield. Minds unravel instantly, and the fighters feel their very senses being ripped away from their bodies. Trapped within layers of illusions, the combatants stumble blindly through their own worst nightmares. The enemy reveals that reality itself has been stolen and replaced with a personalized hell. Blows rain down relentlessly inside the twisted psychic domain, pushing the defenders to their absolute breaking point. Every punch lands with the weight of psychological torture. As the dust clears, the grim reality of the Illusion Master's technique comes to light. People navigate their days trapped in manufactured motivations, completely unaware of the strings attached to their minds. Amidst the wreckage, a moment of levity breaks through as the team regroups and catches their breath. Yet beneath the brief laughter lies the lingering dread of what the enemy is truly capable of. A sudden shift in tone brings a chilling reminder of the costs of war. The Grand Master's resolve hardens into something dangerous as he prepares to exact a heavy toll for crushing someone's will to live.